live from my grandmother's basement. I'm Emily Pineapple.
And I'm Forrest, the keeper of the canon.
And we are no longer the only CGP thing of its type.
True.
We were the only Chris Gethard Presents podcast in existence. We were then the only Chris Gethard Presents live thing on Twitch.
Other than CGP.
Well, now CGP has joined us.
That's true. Well,
as a live thing on Twitch. And this week, Wednesday, it's going to be Chris Gethard and Bobby Moynihan talking about C-list characters, correct? In Star Wars.
While Lennon Parham silently judges them, or quietly judges them.
And she was on Lady Dynamite.
Yes.
And so we thought, what a better excuse to watch along together another Star Wars related thing by someone in the CGP, by people created by those closely in the CGP immediate family.
Yes.
Yes, we're watching the George Lucas talk show.
Yes.
And we have Connor Ratliff and Patrick Cotnoir.
Yeah.
Like, can we just say, please introduce.
So, you know Connor from his run for the presidency, his quest for Olympic gold, 12-hour day with JD and Connor. He was the warm-up comic and field correspondent on the Fusion and True TV versions of TCGS. And, of course, he is the mind behind both Dead Eyes and Talk-a-Doodle-Doo.
Some pretty excellent stuff.
That's right. Also, I brought the chair out for the guests in the final run of episodes.
The chairman of the show.
Yeah. It should never be forgotten that was my final bit on the show. Just such a beloved, cherished bit that was in almost every episode of the final run.
Oh man, that was an absolutely great bit. We're also joined by Patrick Cotnoir, the talent booker and producer on the George Lucas Talk Show, and ASCAT 3000.
Yeah.
Collaborated with Connor on Elysium Watch, which I listened to and was hilarious.
So good.
I don't know.
You were the one.
Like, we have to talk about your penchants for creating things that are like, what would we even call it? It's sort of like live soundscapes. Like the soundscapes of humans living.
Wow. Okay. I like that.
Huh.
Yeah. I've never thought of it that way, but sure, I'll take it.
And yeah, so that was really cool. It was recorded in 2019. There was this poster, just to explain to everyone who's like, what the fuck?
Oh, yeah.
There was a poster of the film Elysium, which I saw. It was strange.
You saw it?
I saw it with my mother.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Oh, wow.
Don't. You don't need to. You really don't.
It was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fine. Have you seen what's the movie where it's in South Africa with the aliens?
I've seen District
9.
Yeah, that's like just a way better version of the aesthetic.
Right.
I think.
Great.
But yeah, it's Patrick Cotnoir, everyone.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good.
Doing good. How are you?
Just great. Everything's going great, and the world's in a really great place. We're all doing really good.
Oh, it's all sunny. Yeah, it's really
It's so
wonderful.
gorgeous.
Everything's going perfectly
Sunny
right
all the time. Yeah.
now.
Keeps getting better. Up and up
Yes.
and up.
Yes. I'm psyched to be here.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you both so much for joining us. I know that everyone on Planet Scum, there's a ton of people in the stream chat, are so excited to see you and so excited to watch the show and hear your thoughts about it. I would love to, before we get started watching this George Lucas talk show at New York Comic Con,
We just a few weeks ago, we got the email inviting us to apply to do a panel at the 2020 New York Comic Con at the Javits Center Relief Hospital.
Connor, should we talk about this here? Did you apply?
I haven't applied. What I don't know is whether I don't know if it means that if we get in that it's just us volunteering as like medical staff. Like I don't know if we get a panel, does that mean that we have to go in and be like frontline heroes come October?
if you're not going to apply, do I have to apply? We should get this out of the way now. We should talk about this here.
I don't think it's going to happen, Patrick. I don't think it matters.
It doesn't matter. Just apply.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're curious where it started and how everyone got involved with it.
The George Lucas Talk Show?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it started back when George Lucas was doing the special editions in the 90s, and he was adding a bunch of things in the Star Wars movies. And I started doing a George Lucas character for my friends, in part because, you know, we didn't really like the new stuff that was happening. And so I was doing a character version of George Lucas that was explaining why all these changes were really great. And for years I would do this character, and then cut to like 2013 or whatever, 2012, 2013, somewhere around then, I did a show at UCB that was a one-man show where I did characters. And they had this system where you would audition a show, and then if it wasn't quite right, they would sometimes give you a second show to like work it out, and then they would decide whether to give you a run or not. I thought it went really well, and then I didn't get a second show to even work out. And I thought, oh, I wonder if it's because like I'm not enough of a draw at the theater, and this idea doesn't have enough pull to bring people in. So I kind of thought, well, if I ever do another show, I want to have like a hook that will bring people in who have no idea who I am. And I was trying to think, well, what do I know about? And I was like, I don't know enough about Harry Potter to do a Harry Potter show, or like, you know, I was trying to think like what's popular. And I was like, oh, what if I just did George Lucas? And instead of, because it used to be that my friend would interview me as George Lucas. He'd be like asking like, George, why did you do this? And I'd be like, oh, we thought it'd be better if there were more little bouncy mice in the movie, you know, and then I was like, oh, what if I'm the one asking the questions, but then I make all the questions tie into like what they have to do with, like my version of George Lucas only knows, he only really knows what George Lucas did. Like it's not like I don't spend a lot of time like talking about like Kurosawa or something. Like I'll find a way to make it about either Star Wars or Willow or Howard the Duck or, you know, Captain EO or whatever. And so then at first we were doing it, and Patrick was not part of the show. He was the audience member, although actually he was the warm-up comedian for the very first George Lucas Talk Show.
Not a comedian, not a stand-up. Got forced into doing it.
It was literally like 10 minutes before the show was about to start, and I was like, the comedian who was supposed to do the warm-up hadn't shown. And I was like, why don't you do it? And there's video of it. You did great. Patrick did better than a lot of people who have Netflix specials. I mean that.
I did better than the comedian that was booked would have done.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know who the comedian was.
I'll tell you later. No, actually, no, he would have been great. But I'm glad you did it. And then you came to a bunch of shows. Then it became a UCB show, because we did it outside of UCB for a few test shows, which were really high quality shows comedy-wise, but really low quality shows attendance-wise. Nobody came to see them. Then we started doing them at UCB, and Patrick for a long time was just watching the shows. And I don't even really remember the moment when you became the producer of the show.
There was a point, I remember I'd been like helping out for like probably 6 months or something like that. And Connor referred to me to someone as the producer of the show, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like he had never told me that. He had never insinuated anything. He was just like, "No, you're the producer," and I'm like, "You have to tell me these things." I don't know.
Honestly, that still sometimes happens where.
Yeah. I didn't know if you had applied for Comic-Con this year. It just happened.
No, but there are times when I'll be working on something, and then Patrick will find out that he's working on it too. And then I'll just be like, of course, like, and always with the promise that if I ever, I mean, now the chances of actual, quote unquote, actual success ever happening are they've gone away, because there's no industry left, unless I'm going to be unless Patrick wants to produce my Zoom cast or whatever.
Why not?
There always was the promise that if I ever got a real show, that Patrick would finally pay off. You know, he would have it as a real, like, a career thing rather than as like a hobby thing, because everything I do is more hobby than career.
And there was never a promise that if I ever got a real show, Connor would get a job out of it. I never made
that. And I wouldn't expect it.
No.
Well, because the odds are that that's not the way it works. Like if you became a producer of something, that you'd be like, one of my conditions is that the host of the show is this guy that I work with on these free shows.
There's plenty of roles you could get.
But you're saying there's no way I'll get any of them.
That's fair. You're right.
Yeah.
But then we've been doing it at UCB for like 5 years now or something like that. It's been a long time.
No, I think we're coming up on 7, aren't we?
Well, yeah, but there was like
6 or 7.
There was like 7 or 8 months at the beginning where it had not happened.
When did we start in 2013 or 2014?
I think it was 2014. I think we just passed 6. If I'm
okay.
I
think it was.
Yeah, so we made it to 6 years, and then the world fell apart.
Yeah.
I don't want to open up the biggest can of worms.
Are you sure you don't?
No, I'm not sure that I don't. I'm absolutely opening up the biggest can of worms.
We should also say Griffin is finishing up recording a podcast. He'll hopefully be in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't stop watching just because Griffin's not here yet. Please, Tick fans, please stay.
Oh my God.
Can of worms. What is your can of worms?
What are your worms?
My worms. My many worms. Oops.
Yeah.
I'm curious from both of you, what's your definition of success? And how do you feel like you've related to it during your career? Have you had different relationships with it?
Well, currently, it's just keeping a virus out of my parents' house.
Yeah, that's a good marker.
That's a good success.
So far, and I don't even know if I'm successful because it takes 14 days to know if you're successful. It used to be that if you became successful, sometimes you'd know it right away.
What is your normal, Connor? What's your normal barometer for success?
Normally, success you would know in less than 2 weeks, and it wouldn't constantly be rolling over that your success had ended.
I always
normally
say
failure you didn't know.
That you like, and you're doing fun stuff. That's successful. It doesn't matter if you're making a lot of money or if you're doing things that a lot of people see.
That's it.
Working on cool things that you really enjoy, which I think Connor and I both have been very lucky to do over the years. A lot of times
operative word have been, the past tense, have been very lucky. That used to be the definition of success. You are 100% correct. Patrick is correct. That used to be the definition of success.
Thank you.
And now the definition is keeping a virus out of your house, and you find out every 2 weeks. I mean, that's not how it works, but like it's a rolling thing where it takes you 2 weeks to find out you are no longer successful.
I think Connor has had a lot of fun success in the world, and I think he's been very lucky to be able to work on some cool projects with cool people, and that has rolled over into new projects, and you still get to work with those people, but that world keeps expanding. And I think both of us have worked on shows where fun people are there, and then those fun people go on to go do other cool things with different groups of cool people. And sometimes he or I or both of us get brought in. Like we both worked on the President Show. That was a lot of fun. We both worked on Cop Show a little bit. Colin Quinn's show with JD. That was a lot of fun.
And Griffin Newman.
Who will be
from the Tick, who will be here so soon. We promise.
So soon, we promise.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's
so yeah, and like it also, and this is a little bit of what some of the thematic territory. They're making a documentary about the George Lucas talk show. They're editing, and I guess they'll probably have to film some extra stuff to contextualize how everything changed. But a lot of the themes that kept popping up had to do with that. Sometimes you do a thing and it's successful on its own terms, and sometimes you're doing it because you're striving to have it become a bigger thing. So sometimes like something like Talk-a-Doodle-Doo, artistically, creatively, I think it's successful on its own terms. I also would love to be able to do something like that on a slightly bigger scale that can be continued in some form where everyone can like make their living from it. The George Lucas Talk Show was something where my goals for it have absolutely been met in terms of like, I don't want it to become a big podcast. I don't want it to become a TV show. Like, I want it to be a show that we do at UCB that audiences come to and they get into it. And it was designed in a way to not have that extra layer of like, well, this is good, but wouldn't it be great if, like, I think with like the Chris Gethard show when it was on public access, one of the things that made it good on public access was that even though we wanted to turn it into a real show, I think we all had some inkling of the idea that it would not be the same, even if it was still good or still great, that it was, we weren't just doing it to make it into a quote unquote real show, that you want to design things so that you're not always just looking for the next thing. And George Lucas Talk Show is very much a show where it's like we were hitting all the marks that we wanted to hit in terms of what we wanted it to be.
Did Comic-Con and those kinds of venues play into those goals that you were hoping for it originally?
Yeah. Now I will be upfront about the fact that my main reason for wanting to do the Comic-Con shows is that it gets you into Comic-Con for free.
That's a great reason.
Because I kind of like Comic-Con, but I would never pay to go to Comic-Con because it already is expensive to go in for free, and then you buy things.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was a little nervous doing the 2018 one because it's a much bigger space, and the only people who can come see it are people who are going to Comic-Con. So we wouldn't have a lot of our regular audience coming to see it. And it was like also
a 400 seat room it was in.
Yeah. And it was also like, I was very wary about when we did it in 2018, it felt like the anger in the Star Wars fan base was rising in the wake of The Last Jedi, and that there was this angry faction that I was like, are these people going to like this show? Are the people at Comic-Con going to enjoy our weird, silly version of George Lucas? And I was pleasantly surprised. I think at the beginning of it, I asked people who were angry about The Last Jedi to stand up.
Don't spoil it. We're going to watch it.
I know, but this is something to look for.
It's a great moment.
Okay.
Yeah. I was pretty happy with the fact that it was like 6 people or something stood up. It was not very many people.
Oh.
And then they were not, I don't know. It wasn't like, I was worried that it was going to be a much bigger thing. I'm like, no, it actually confirmed my sense that the negativity is amplified in a way that distorts the perception of what's real.
That reminds me of when at Celebration in Chicago, we met some people in line, and they were like, "So I don't like The Last Jedi, but I'm not like one of those people. I'm good. I'm a nice person. You can like me."
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's a lot of people like that, and it's frustrating to see the other people online, whether they're real or whether they're bots.
Yeah.
That being said, if you talk negatively about The Last Jedi, I usually block you on Twitter.
It's a fair barometer, I
Yeah,
think.
no, I get it. I get that.
Hundreds of people.
Well, there's also a thing which is like after The Force Awakens came out, a friend of mine was talking, and he was almost like being apologetic about the fact that he thought he liked it, but he's like, just didn't make me feel the way the other movies made me feel. And he's like, I liked it a lot better than the prequels, but I just feel like it wasn't. I was like, it's been decades. You saw these other movies as a child, and now you're like a grown man, and it's okay if these children's space adventures don't scratch the same itch that they used to. Like, I felt very lucky that I have basically enjoyed all of the Disney Star Wars movies. I think they're fun. I think they range from good to great. And I think when there's a bad moment, it's usually one that I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not wild about that part or whatever. But I never experienced anything that would be recognizable as like a purely negative emotion. But yeah, these are pretty fun. At the same time, they're not. I had a realization recently, which is that when I was a kid and the original Star Wars movies were coming out, like I was 2. No, I was 2 when the first one came out, and so I think I saw it when I was 3. And then there was like 2 years before there was a second movie, and during that 2 years, I was playing with the toys and I was like making up Star Wars stories. And then there was like another 3 years till there was another movie, and during those 3 years, I spent all my time like playing with the toys and making up my own Star Wars stories. So from age 2 to age like 8 or whatever, most of my Star Wars time was not spent watching the movies because we didn't have a VCR. There was no way I would maybe get to see them if there was like a summer movie festival for kids and they'd show Empire Strikes Back again. Maybe I get to see it a second time or whatever, you know. But if you think about it, most of my childhood was me making up Star Wars things because I'd seen a movie once or twice. Now, if you're a little kid and you're a Star Wars fan, you've got like hundreds of hours of catching up to do. Like you've just got to, you don't have time to play with the toys because you've got to watch like, well, there's the 9 main movies and then you got to watch these other ones. Then there's this TV series and there's just so much to watch. And I think that's a really different experience. And it's not a coincidence that as an adult, my main Star Wars related pastime is pretending to be George Lucas. It's just an adult version of what I did as a kid, which is that I would hold little action figures and I would pretend to be the characters. That's my main Star Wars activity as a kid, was an imaginative, creative act. And that's very different than if your main Star Wars activity is that a movie comes out and then you like predict what the next one will be. And then when it comes out and it's not like that, you're furious. Like, I can't even relate to the idea of like, I didn't see Empire Strikes Back at age 5 and be like, I bet this is what'll happen. And then when it didn't, I'd be like, no. Just be like, and that's what happens to Star Wars movies now. Imagine if I went into Return of the Jedi and it was like, I didn't predict Ewoks, so I would be like, this is not what I thought would be a Star Wars. Like, I had spent hundreds of hours making up fake Star Wars things, the toys. But then when I go see the movie, I'd be like, but that's what really happened.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be like, Luke would never go back to his father.
That's how I feel about Star Wars, or a lot of things. If something happens in it where I don't like it, I'm like, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I might not like the choices in some season of a TV show, but I'm like, yeah, but that was it. Like, that's what happened. So let's get used to it.
I find it so funny when people get mad that Luke went off to an island and gave up after bad things. And I'm like, the last time we saw him, he lost his big fight and he was crying so hard that his dad killed his boss. like that the end of the Star Wars trilogy originally was watching our hero cry so hard that it made Darth Vader kill his boss. This is your big hero. The last time we saw him, he's like, Father, please! Oh, God! And I'm like, you think this guy won't go to an island? The last time we saw him, he was begging his dad to save him. Just look at that scene. Just look at that scene. And then try to imagine, like, do you think this guy would ever give up? Father, no! Your boss is hurting me! And Darth Vader's just like, shit.
I guess I have to do something.
Years I put into this company, the years that I put into this company, and it's all down the drain because my son is crying.
So we did the show at Comic-Con in 2018, and it went really well. And then in 2019, we did it again, and it also went really well.
And that's the end of the story?
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Now, I don't know, did anybody film 2019?
Yes.
Should we put that online?
And it is online.
Oh, it is?
Oh, it is?
Isn't that what we watching?
Watching 2018.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I believe
got the date wrong.
2019 is online too.
Who put it online?
Mm.
Well, because 2019 is the one which I think is instructive to look at now, because 2019 is the one where we were trying really hard to get Billy D. Williams on the show, because he was in the building for Comic-Con 2019. And so in order to like lure him, I bought a couple of bottles of his 1991 fragrance called Undeniable. And I thought a fun thing to give away at Comic-Con was anyone who wants some could get a spritz of this. He had a men's aftershave and a woman's perfume. And we thought, anybody who wants to come to, I thought it'd be like communion in church, where you just like come up and we'd be like, spray you and may the force be with you and also with you. And as the demo, I spritzed it a couple times. I went like, and I spritzed it up from the dais. And Patrick can testify to this. It's a very big room. Patrick was all the way at the far wall of the room, and he said the scent hit him within seconds. It dispersed. It was like a sarin gas attack on Comic-Con. Anyone who was there, asked them about it, the first thing they will tell you is that we attacked the audience with this like 30-year-old musk that had aged so poorly that people were in genuine distress. They felt really bad. It was really horrible. And it's worth thinking about. I think about that every few days now when I think about the way that people talk about COVID spreading. I think about the way that Billy D. Williams' Undeniable traveled across a convention center room within seconds. Those little molecules of fragrance. Wear a mask, wear gloves, stay inside.
Someone in the chat did, as soon as you mentioned it, say it smelled so bad.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. It was really gross.
Will they verify how quickly it spread? It spread so quickly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Think about that when you think about this virus. I went and did curbside. I'm in Jefferson City, Missouri. I went and did curbside pizza pickup, and nobody else is wearing masks except the people who work in the pizza place. Everybody else who's getting out of their cars, they have no gloves, they have no masks. People are not taking it seriously here. I got out of the car. I look like I'm in a cult. Everyone's looking at me like I've shown up and I'm dressed in this like costume, and I'm like, you're all getting it.
It does sound like Billy D. Williams' fragrance could be a novel way to fight it, though, because everyone will want a mask if that smell is in the room.
Oh, or maybe it's just so horrible that it's the one thing that will kill this virus on contact. Like, I think if everybody sprayed Billy D. Williams Undeniable, we'd be like, it stopped. And we'd be like, it went away. It was the one thing that I think it might. I mean, what could it hurt? As the president says about whatever medicine whatever the president heard about whatever medicine someone just mentioned to him, like, go ahead, cover yourself in Billy D. Williams Undeniable. Try it. What do you have to lose?
Hey Griffin, how fast did the Billy D. Williams smell travel?
Oh, I mean, lightning speed, like faster than sound. It was insane. It was incredible. Sorry, I'm so late, guys. I got stuck on another podcast talking about Star Wars.
I wish I knew.
It was not the intent, and somehow I ended up explaining the entire history of the George Lucas talk show.
Hey, that's what we did here.
Wow. Okay, so we both covered the same ground, just in different locations. Yeah.
I wish I knew how to do a cool background like you did.
You got to hit the virtual background button next to the little camera icon.
Griffin, just send us your audio and we'll sync it up with our audio and we'll tell the whole story.
Oh, perfect. Oh, cool. Thank you. Yeah, of course.
Welcome, Griffin, to the show. This show. Thank you so much for joining us. Holy crap. This is really cool.
Pleasure. A very cool setup you have there with all the pink Star Destroyer.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Are these homemade or are these painted?
So they're painted model kits.
Gotcha.
And this one
you
is
put your own spin
the
on
Errant
them.
Venture from the books. It's a smuggler-owned Star Destroyer.
Okay.
Painted red due to what? All of the red paint he got?
He wanted it to not be the boring gray and made a deal where the New Republic would give him paint and they only had red. And so this gaudy thing was created.
I like that.
But welcome. I'm
Yeah.
Emily. This
I'm
is Forrest.
Great, nice to meet both of you.
Oh, nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you. Again, thank you so much. We are on the We Are Trash. I'm not sure if anyone has explained this to you.
Yeah.
The We Are Trash People stream. We do a podcast about the people who are on Chris Gethard Presents every week. And we're currently talking about the George Lucas Talk Show because Chris Gethard is going to be talking with Bobby Moynihan about C-level Star Wars characters.
Yes.
So we were like, we should have all of the fans of Chris Gethard Presents watch the George Lucas Talk Show.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's this button that you're talking about, Griffin, where you can do the background?
You might not be able to do it on your
You
phone.
see where there's
Oh,
a
yeah.
little camera that says stop video?
Yeah, I
Okay,
wouldn't
don't
press
use it
that
on the
button.
phone.
Don't press that.
No, don't.
But
press
you see the little arrow pointing up next to stop video?
It says share.
There's like stop video, and then there's a little arrow, and it will say select the camera and then choose virtual background. Do you see that?
No, I don't have that. The arrow next to it says share, like
I'm
not like Sonny and Cher, like SHARE.
Yeah. No, that was my assumption. No, I'm sorry.
I guess it's not an option for me.
It might not be, or I just don't know how to guide you towards it. Patrick's background is now a picture of Patrick. It's a very handsome picture of Patrick sitting at his computer.
Anyway,
yeah.
Griffin, how did you get involved in the George Lucas
Yeah.
Talk Show?
Yeah.
I was a big fan of Connor's work in general through going to the Chris Gethard show all the time. I think I saw him there before I saw him at UCB doing improv. But over the years of me going to the Gethard show on a regular basis, we got to know each other. And then Connor started doing the George Lucas show. Before he did it at UCB, he did the run of test shows at different theaters in New York. And he asked me to be a guest on one of them because I was in a movie called Draft Day that was coming out. And he thought it would be good to have someone who could pretend that they were promoting a thing.
I always like it when someone can show a clip.
Right. So that represented my entire promotional tour for the movie Draft Day. They did not have me do any other promo. It was just the George Lucas Talk Show. But then I went to almost every show after that. I would go almost every time when he did it at UCB for a couple years with Sean Diston playing Jar Jar. And then when Sean moved to LA, around that time, Connor and I were on a UCB show together that was Star Wars improv. It was when The Force Awakens was about to come out, and there was a Star Wars themed improv show where everyone came in costume and did improv in character as a different Star Wars character. And Connor had an incredibly detailed, high quality Boba Fett costume. And I had my incredibly shitty Watto costume that I had made to wear seeing Force Awakens at midnight. And Connor did the whole first half of the improv show as Boba Fett with the helmet on. He would not respond to Connor even backstage before the show. The only things he said during the improv show, during scenes, were lines that Boba Fett said in the movie. I was just doing my horrible Watto impression, which is mostly a game of me trying to say the most offensive things I can. And then the second half of the show, Connor pulled off his helmet and revealed that the entire time underneath the helmet, he had spray painted his hair and beard gray, and now was going to do the second half of the show as George Lucas.
Wow.
So we did that show together, along with a lot of other people. And then after that show, I remember saying to Connor, hey, I have this Watto costume. I've been doing this Watto impression. Could I please fill in? I know Diston is moving to LA. And he was like, well, I might try out a few people. And there were like a couple months where you tried out different sidekicks. And then
Did I?
There was 1 month where you had Casey Jost do J.J. Abrams.
That was because I couldn't make it to the show.
No, there was 1 month where am I wrong about this? Because the show where you couldn't make it, we were both filming on the same job.
Yeah.
And
I think that's the only time I had Casey do JJ, and that was because I couldn't make it to the show.
So maybe that was it. Wow. Because then we were both on the same shoot, wondering if we were going to make it out in time to go to George Lucas Talk Show, me to watch it, you to host it. And then I ended up rapping before you got to the UCB, and then I ended up doing that show with Casey and someone else.
Brandon Scott Jones.
Oh, it was Brandon Scott Jones. That's what it was. It was Brandon Scott Jones and Casey as J.J. Abrams. And then I ended up doing it with them as myself. I had done the show twice with you as myself as a guest.
That's right.
Right. So I knew how the show was. But the honest answer is I pestered Connor until he let me try it one time.
Well, I think
as Watto.
I think I was like not sure whether or not like it, like, because Jar Jar always felt like the perfect like talk show sidekick, and I was less invested in the Watto character from the movies. And so when you suggest, I remember thinking like, oh, is it better to have like a rotating like when Gene Siskel on Siskel and Ebert, when he died, there was like a year where Roger Ebert had just different critics filling in.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, maybe it'll be like that. But I don't think I ever had anyone but you. The only other time that I ever had a different sidekick, I think, was one time when I took it to London. I was on this London trip, and someone did a different sidekick bit for that. And then there may have been a time when Anthony Atamanuik, I can't remember if that was ever a sidekick thing.
He did Spielberg on a show that I was also on. It was something.
Yeah, and he did Alec Guinness. Were you there for the Alec Guinness show?
I think so. Yeah, the Spielberg one I remember very vividly because you asked him if he would do it like 10 minutes before the show started. And he very quickly tried to put together a Spielberg costume, and he was asking us specifics that he could use for Spielberg. He was like, "Which things did you direct again?"
But I don't think I ever did a. I'm so envious that you're able to do virtual backgrounds and I can't. I don't think I ever actually did. I think that was the idea, but I don't think I ever actually used a different sidekick in a show that I can remember.
Those are the only two I remember.
I just remember after the show you said like you can keep doing this if you want to.
Yeah, because it was great. I also wasn't sure. I also wasn't sure. I'm like this. I don't think I was aware that you'd been to every show. So I think part of me was like, you're not going to want to keep doing this.
No, I very eagerly wanted to do it. I also think you're right that like Sean's Jar Jar felt like such a perfect late night sidekick. But the way I approached it was like, if Sean was doing Kevin Eubanks, then I'm going to do Ed McMahon. Like I was like, it felt like he was doing that sort of like super friendly, like I'm on your side, I'm laughing at every joke you make, I'm supporting you thing. And I'm going to try to be the more like cantankerous, is this guy paying attention, sort of oil and vinegar partner.
Also, I think like, I assumed when you got the tick that I'm like, oh, well now Griffin won't do the show anymore. And not only did you keep doing the show, but you would do the show on days that you had just been filming for like 14 hours, and then you would come to the theater and do the show.
Yeah, and I would be angry if we didn't wrap in time, because we didn't shoot overnights very often, and like 2 times across 2 seasons, it overlapped with the George Lucas talk show, and I was really angry at people.
Yeah,
it was like the one like hard out I would demand. I'd be like, I have to put on my Watto nose and go do a comedy show.
Yeah. And also, I would say when Sean Diston was doing Jar Jar Binks, the first show he was doing a full-on impression where he's doing the voice.
Yeah.
And then we pretty quickly said, you can start phasing the voice out. And by the time we'd been doing it for 6 months, he was just doing it in his own voice and saying, hey, I'm Jar Jar Binks. And
throw in some Yusas and some Misas, but otherwise he would speak exactly as himself.
Yeah, every now and then he'd say Misa like that a lot, and he'd just say it as himself.
You cracked me up, George.
But also the funny thing about Sean at that point was he was like a very casual Star Wars fan. Like, he didn't really know much, and now he's like a huge Star Wars fan, and it's wild. He like knows everything. He probably knows he knows more about like Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff than probably both of you do.
Probably. Yeah.
So it was just very funny going from someone who knew about Star Wars to Griffin, who did know a lot about Star Wars and could contribute a lot of very specifics to the conversation, which
Yeah. Your version of Watto, though, you have been able to sustain a faithful recreation of the character for years without having the temptation to slide into your own persona.
But I also feel like the game of my Watto character is so much that he's just the worst fucking creature in the world. Like I do the thing almost every show. Before the show, I go to Patrick and I'm like, what's the worst thing that's happened in the news in the last week? Like, I try to find some reference point of something that everyone agrees is terrible, and then I have Watto take credit for it in the open.
Always something.
Right. So that, like, it makes me feel like I don't want this character to slip into being more of myself, because I want to maintain as much of a distance as possible, to the extent that the only time I've ever felt really like nervous and vulnerable doing the show is the one show I did where I was flying back from LA that day and my flight got stuck on the tarmac. They wouldn't let us on board. So I thought I was going to be able to go home, get my Watto costume and make it to the theater. And I instead had to go straight from the airport to the UCB. And I came on stage with my luggage without the Watto costume. And it was so hard to do without wearing the dumb costume. Like, it just it felt so exposed. Like,
it's a shield.
It's very different to say Jews control the media and the banks dressed like Griffin Newman.
Right. Like, I talk about like how Jeffrey Epstein's the best friend I ever had. And when it's like, the only difference is just that stupid nose that I'm not wearing. But it feels so different if that's not on.
Yeah.
Well, it looked natural to me. It looked very convincing. It looked like you really meant everything you said.
It sounded so natural coming out of your mouth.
Yeah, thank you. That means the world to me. I'm glad
you pulled it off.
I was curious, Griffin, why Watto? What was your connection with that character?
I was like trying to break this down. I honestly think I was 10 when The Phantom Menace came out. And as a Jew who grew up in New York City, I honestly think something about that character seemed familiar and comfortable to me in a way that I didn't realize was offensive at the time. Like, he is such a bad anti-Semitic stereotype, but to me, I was like, yeah, like, I know people like this. Like, I like family members like this. I was like, this voice is like comforting to me. I just remember, before the movie came out, I had saved up my allowance to be able to buy as much Phantom Menace merchandise as I could for like the 6 months leading up to the release. And when I went to Toys R Us, I was like, that character looks the best. Like, I was already just like, that's the coolest looking alien of all the new aliens. I like the design. I had no idea how he would sound, what role he would play in the movie. And then once I saw him, I was just like, Watto kills. Like, every line's a banger. This guy's funny. He's got a nice little arc. And then it wasn't until years later when I rewatched it and I was just like, this is horrible. Like, everything about the character is coded such an offensive.
Yeah. I love that basically your story of that is you saw The Phantom Menace and maybe for the first time in the Star Wars franchise, you felt seen.
I did. I was like, honestly, I was like, this is the closest I felt to representation.
I was like that. I was like that when The Last Jedi came out and that little leprechaun shook BB-8 for money.
Yeah. Finally, you had your moment.
I was like, that's my uncle's.
Yeah. But it went from being just like truly, honestly, the character that I loved the most to then being the character that I was the most fascinated by because I couldn't figure out how I ever felt such genuine affection for him. But it's always come from a sincere place.
I do want to say, because I do think it's something that hasn't really been commented on, that, like, you know how, like, in The Last Jedi, it's the only one where it doesn't technically, no one says, I have a bad feeling about this, but then you find out that BB-8 says it, and you just don't hear it. So they found a clever way of, like, he says something, and then he's like, positive beeps, buddy, or whatever. You're like, oh, he, like, snuck in, like, this thing. I do really love the fact that The Last Jedi figured out what kind of ethnic slur you could do and not have anybody mind in the 21st century.
I have no idea where you're going with this.
The Irish, drunken little Irish leprechaun in the casino, because it is like no Irish person cares unless you're actively doing something that's about like what the British did to the Irish or something. nobody gets mad at a leprechaun joke. You know, nobody gets mad at like Darby O'Gill and the Little People. And I do think it's ingenious that he managed to hold true, that Rian Johnson managed to hold true to a Star Wars tradition that is a deep vein without actually being problematic in the modern era.
Well, it's also, I mean, it's like the key to Star Wars is archetypes of mythic storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between the prequels and the original trilogy is in the original trilogy, he picks inoffensive archetypes. And in the prequels, he's like, what are like impressions your uncle does? Like all of them are just.
Yeah, but he does, you know.
Also,
like those are the sand people.
Right. But he keeps just enough of a distance that you're like, I guess there's a little bit of deniability here. I can tell myself this isn't coded in a way that's offensive.
But you can also say that he is paying tribute to the works of George Lucas, because Sean Connery was in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in his first movie, Darby O'Gill and the Little People. So he's really just like pulling from the past to. I just think people don't think about that.
I'm curious. You said about Star Wars characters being archetypes, like that's the strength of them. As people who are inhabiting Star Wars characters, essentially, and the character of George Lucas, as well as the fascination with, I suppose, like the archetype of the auteur. How does that relate to how you play these characters, how you inhabit them?
No, that's true. I mean, it's like, I feel like there's this sort of thought in improv that, like, if you identify what type of character you're playing, you want to commit as hard as you can to all the tropes of that type of character to sort of communicate it to the audience what the game is. And like Watto is, from George Lucas's standpoint, kind of riffing on like Shylock and Fagin and all those like anti-Semitic sort of like characters who haggle over money and have weird relationships to children. And I feel like I also try to work into that, like the sleazeball old Hollywood producer character, you know, like all these other archetypes where it's like the comedic archetypes of, as much as I can code to the audience, this is what type of dude this is, so that like I can take all the things that are canon within Star Wars, but also add like him complaining about the alimony he has to pay to his ex-wives. Like you just try to find the lateral things for what type of character he is.
And you add in like the Borscht Belt kind of sensibility.
Right, that too. I try
that
to
is almost there. It's almost there in the character in the movies, but you like bring it out fully.
Right. Well, it's like in between those two movies, Watto has 15 minutes of screen time maximum. And I've had to do this character for an hour plus per show for 3 years now. So it's like you start to like pull from like parallel things. So you're like, okay, Rodney Dangerfield, like that's one thing. Like Harvey Weinstein, that's one thing. Like who are other sort of like adjacent figures I can take tropes from? In the same way that like, you know, someone like Obi-Wan is like, oh, it's like a little bit of like a Kurosawa, like samurai character, and it's a little bit of like Merlin, you know, you pull from the sort of different types of like sage mentor characters.
Do you think that's why there's so many comedians getting roles in Star Wars things right now? They're like
Horatio Sands and Amy Sedaris and Bill Burr, and
they're like attuned to the stereotype, the archetype, the types for comedy.
I think that's maybe why they work so well within it. But I also think it's just that kind of thing of like the people like Favreau now making Star Wars or Rian Johnson recognize, oh, they'll get this. Like they'll get what this needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest problem that I always identify the biggest problem with the prequel trilogy is that like if you look at the Phantom Menace, there's, I can't remember, Griffin, you'll remember the name. Who's the guy who's like the military captain who's always like
this is your Captain Panaka, who's the head of like Padme's security. Yeah.
And that character should be funny because like Jar Jar Binks is sort of taking all of the comedic like weight. He's like, all the jokes are going to him, but Captain Panaka should be like the Harrison Ford part. Like what makes the first three Star Wars movies so good is they're really funny, in ways that like you have like Harrison Ford for most of the 3 movies is basically saying like, I don't want to be in this Star Wars movie. And like, not as the actor, but he's like, I want my money. I want to go get out of here. I don't want to be in a Star Wars adventure. And he keeps saying like, this is stupid. I hate this. I don't like this. Boring conversation. Anyway, it's all like him like joking.
He deflates everything just enough to make it relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An audience.
My phone fell.
Oh my God.
But I think like these movies always are funny, you know, like Yoda's Frank Oz, and that's you get like one of the funniest comedians in the world to be the, you know, wise Jedi master. And what's the most serious Star Wars movie? Like, what's the most purely dramatic Star Wars movie?
Well, it's
Rogue One.
Last Jedi?
I was going to say Revenge of the Sith. I feel like Revenge of the Sith has the least comedy of any of them. Because Rogue One, you have like K2SO.
Yeah, that's true.
Character. Half of Phantom Menace, more than half, like 90% of Phantom Menace, 75% of Phantom Menace is so self-serious. And then the rest of the comedy is so broad. And Attack of the Clones has like Dexter Jetster and stuff. I feel like Revenge of the Sith has like almost no comedy. But it is that thing of like, the problem is that he put all his money on Jar Jar being the comedy character in Phantom Menace, and Jar Jar so badly wants to be in a Star Wars movie.
Mm-hmm.
What you need is the character who doesn't want to be in a Star Wars movie.
I'll say this, and Patrick's heard me talk about this because it's sort of the thing that I've become, if there's one Star Wars plot point I've become fixated on, it's that Obi-Wan Kenobi doesn't mercy kill Anakin at the volcano fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He just lets him like stay there to burn to death. He walks away. It might be the most unfathomably dark thing that a good guy character does in a Star Wars movie, because I don't know why he wouldn't just put him out of his misery at bare minimum. He's like, I love you. You are a brother. And he's saying all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, put a lightsaber through that guy's head. He's frying to death on this thing.
Yeah.
And
It's like there are almost two different angles to it. It's like, if you think he's that much of a threat to the universe, you want to kill him. It's like killing baby Hitler. Like, you just need to take him off the board. If you actually still care about him to any degree, then you want to mercy kill him at that point.
it's two birds. It is a classic two birds scenario where there's a good guy reason to kill him and a practical reason to kill him. Like, he's your friend and also he's a threat. And instead he walks away. And all I want to see is a movie where it's like all the conversations he has with people in the days following that. We're like, what did you do? Like, you fought at the volcano? And I wanted to know, did he tell people, I cut off his arms and legs and I just left him there to die? And I guess the Emperor, like, I don't know, scooped him up.
I got scooped up.
I hope that's the Obi-Wan show. I hope it's just you and McGregor having that conversation every episode with random people.
I want there to be a character. I would think it'd be great just to have different. I just picture like Jason Mantzoukas improvising as a character, where he's like finding out what happened. Just watch Jason Mantzoukas being like, so wait, you're telling me you left him on the volcano, and now he's Darth Vader. That's on you. He's Darth Vader.
Burning.
That is insane. That makes no sense.
That would be so good. I
just want, because like when you see Obi-Wan in the desert in A New Hope, picture that character being like, all this Darth Vader stuff is my fault because I did the cruelest thing I've ever done in my life, which was walk away while my friend was like, I hate you. He was just like, I'll let him roll. It wasn't like he was having mercy on him. It was like, I'll let him roll into the lava.
Yeah.
That's how he'll die.
It was also, it's such a good illustration of the fact that George Lucas clearly didn't have the entire thing planned out. Because if that's what was in his mind's eye as like the final confrontation between Obi-Wan and Anakin, that entire character would have been coded very differently. Like, he would have been far more conscious, just like, well, I retired and live here in a cave now. Like, he would be a lot less folksy.
Every little moment in A New Hope if you think it's someone who committed basically what I would say is a war crime to his best friend.
Yeah.
To the little boy he essentially raised.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's like,
his surrogate son.
that's a name I haven't heard in a long, long time.
Right. Instead, he talks about him as like, you know, he was like my friend in college, and then we all kind of grew up, and he couldn't stop drinking, and I just didn't have time for that guy anymore. Like, that's the way old Obi-Wan talks about Darth Vader. He's like, you know, he's just like that guy. It's a shame what happened to him. He couldn't pull it together.
I also tell you this.
I'm responsible. I failed him, and I let him burn.
It's also the first reason. It's the first good justification that I've thought of for why he has to be an old Force ghost while Hayden Christensen gets to be a young, sexy Force ghost.
Yeah.
Is that I believe that the Force is like, you don't get to be young Obi-Wan. You are a sicko.
Yeah. You fucked up. You really fucked up.
You left your friend. Yes. Darth Vader killed all those younglings, but he repented. He felt bad about it. You were cold as ice. You're like, you didn't tell anybody that you left your friend at the volcano.
And then actively lied to his son about how it all happened.
He didn't lie to him.
He just omitted things.
It was
a lot of important.
What a piece of garbage.
I'm curious before I am very interested to watch this and get your thoughts on it sort of as it's happening. But I'm curious about all of you. What do you think the place of this kind of like adaptive art is? Like, where is art that is based on fandom? Where does it belong? What's your sort of philosophy behind that? I know that a lot of all of your careers are actually based a lot of in things that create this kind of obsessive, large-scale fandom.
I think it's ephemeral.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like it's kind of weird. It's going to be weird. It's weird that like the show we did for A Room of 400 can now be experienced from a single locked camera shot as if you're off to the side in the front. It's a very weird artifact of a thing that really was just meant to be experienced in the room in the moment. Like, it's weird that you guys have seen it already and you're going to see it again. I've never watched it. I just saw that I know that it exists and we put it up on the thing, but I tend to feel like all of these shows are, we've had people who have been like, we want to see it. Like, we live outside of New York. We want to see the show. And it kind of is like, well, that does change the vibe of the show, mm-hmm. because like we've had people break so many NDAs at our show. Like, it's almost a running gag that we'll have people come on the show and be like, I'm not supposed to say this, but, and then they'll say it because it's to a room of like 120 people or something, you know?
But the incredible thing is, I mean, we have so much of our audience is a regular audience that comes every month, that there is this like real like cone of like trust and protection where like someone will come on the show, break an NDA, and then I feel like all three of us will search Twitter and be like, has this leaked out to any degree? And it never leaks out. Yeah. Like, I can think of like 3 or 4 specific instances in which someone who is well known says something that should not be said publicly on the show, states that it should not be said publicly, and I have never seen it repeated anywhere else on the internet, which is incredibly unusual. And
juicy stuff too, like not boring, like
really juicy,
really juicy stuff that if it were me, I'd be like, I should tweet that.
Involving some of the biggest media companies in the world, like very proprietary information. And I've never seen it leak out. And there's something to, I think, how we approach the show and what our audience expects out of the show, where it's like this balance of Star Wars has been parodied almost as long as Star Wars has existed. Like, there are things like Hardware Wars that were like parody, films that were made and like popular in 1977, 78. And you watch, like, there's a Richard Pryor TV special from like a year after Star Wars came out that there's a sketch in the cantina where they let them use all the costumes, like, and even down to like the Star Wars holiday special and all this stuff. And it feels like that used to be part of, as someone who was born long after this happened, but that used to be part of like Star Wars. Like there used to be a thing where fandom used to enjoy seeing their things permeate the popular culture enough that it could be affectionately mocked. And now it feels like, for a bunch of reasons, I feel like a lot of fans feel very territorial about the things that they do. And like, we couldn't do this show if we didn't actually love Star Wars.
Yeah.
There are people who come to our show who know nothing about Star Wars, and their frame of reference is just our characters. And there are people who are massive fans. But I think either way, there's something about the fact that we're not just trying to like dump on Star Wars. And that the only way we're able to do the show the way we do is because we have a deep enough reference base of this stuff that we actually care about. And we're interested in that we can spend this much time pretending to be these people.
Yeah,
I also yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Okay, I'll go. I was gonna say I know multiple people who come to the show fairly regularly who not Star Wars fans have not seen most of the movies.
It's a comedy show for them. They just know like these running bits, and they don't know which bits relate to real things or not.
But I've seen Phantom Menace with multiple people for the first time who were like, "Oh, that's Watto." And like they don't know who Watto is. They only know Griffin Watto. But when regular Watto shows up, they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, no, that's pretty good. That's really spot on." And that's so fascinating that they can get something different out of the show without being a fucking uber nerd about everything.
And sometimes like Connor will reference something really off key that George Lucas has said in the past. Yeah. And you will see some of the audience bristle at it, thinking Connor is trying to make a shock factor joke. And I, as Wada, will say, like, I just want to state very clearly, that is a real thing that George Lucas said. Please Google it when the show is over. And then you can see them all relax. Like, once they realize, oh, this is a reference to a thing that this guy said, rather than this character trying to think of something objectionable to say.
Yeah. I think there might even be an
it's also
in the video.
Yeah, it's also it's also fascinating to think of people watching the Phantom Menace, and it's the equivalent of like the Watto they see in the movie. To them, will feel like they're seeing a biopic of a person they already know. Right. It's like they're watching that, and it's like they're seeing Anthony Hopkins play Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, this is an interesting interpretation of Watto.
Yeah, looks a little different, but I get it.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I also think the thing about like, it's not that we don't dump on Star Wars. We make fun of Star Wars all the time, but I think this show, the more we do it, I think the more it makes us actually love Star Wars.
Yeah. Totally.
Because it's a fun like release valve. It's also like when you're having, that's part of the reason I started doing the character in the first place, was I didn't want the fact that I wasn't crazy about the new stuff he was doing. I didn't want that to diminish my affection for Star Wars. So I thought, well, I'll have fun with it rather than be mad about it. I was never mad, even though the prequels were 1,000% not the movies I wanted. Like when the Force Awakens came out, I was like, this is the first time I've had a feeling that is close to what original Star Wars felt like to me since I was like 8 years old. And but when those prequels came out, I was like, well, these aren't for me. I don't like all these things, but I chose to enjoy what was fun about how crazy it was that these are the movies that we got. Like it's one of the craziest things that any filmmaker has ever done, to make 3 movies that feel so tonally like they exist in a completely different universe than like sometimes people will see like how like Godfather and Godfather Part 2 feel like they were shot at the same time. They feel like they edited them out of the same pile of footage almost. And then Godfather Part 3 looks a little golden and I'm like, ugh, it doesn't quite look or feel right. The Star Wars prequels were that times a million. They were just like
it comes in a different dimension.
Yeah. It would be like finding out that like Law and Order SVU and the original animated Smurfs took place in the same reality.
Very well.
You just be like, how? It doesn't look any,
they don't look visually. They don't look anything alike. It doesn't look like it's possible for Gargamel to be like brought in for questioning.
Yeah.
I love that comparison.
Oh my goodness.
Hmm?
How do you feel? I find
Bad.
it interesting in the. How did you feel when Disney sort of took Star Wars? I'm curious, just because Star Wars has had this like long tradition of people making things about it. And I think a lot of the reasons why the Star Wars fandom has been able to become like this is because people feel like they can take such ownership over it. Unlike Harry Potter, which has had so much control from basically the beginning from Warner Brothers that there is a culture there, but there's not the same kind of culture
because there wasn't even the like fan film awards that they used to do officially at Celebration, and like they used to had a room where they just showed parodies and random bits of Star Wars apocrypha, like the R2D2 Beneath the Dome documentary.
Right.
As an employee of the Walt Disney Company, I have to abstain from
Yes,
this conversation.
yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Of course, that is
absolutely. I'm curious.
Well, I will say, I remember the moment the news hit, like reading a headline that was Disney buys Lucasfilm, Star Wars Episode 7 to hit 2015. You know, whatever that like headline was, which was like in 2012. I remember reading no rumors, no rumblings. Like it came out of nowhere, and suddenly it's like Disney bought this company and they're officially announcing there's a new Star Wars movie. I felt so much optimism and like excitement, because it was kind of like Harry Potter. If suddenly tomorrow J.K. Rowling just announced like, I'm going to let other people have a crack at Harry Potter, and not just I'm going to let other people write some things, or I'm going to collaborate with other people, but like I'm going to allow Harry Potter to kind of become like a public resource, even if it's owned by a giant conglomerate. Right. It felt like so exciting.
She could do that right now. She could do that tonight, JK, if you're watching. You can do it tonight.
You can make Harry Potter open source right now.
I'm gonna let people do Harry Potter, whatever they want.
But so much of like Connor has this bit that he does as George Lucas, where when people ask him what he thinks of like the Disney films, he'll go, "Well, they're fine. That's just not what happened." Like they're fan fiction, but that's not what really happened. As if George,
which is basic. But George Lucas did say that.
Yeah,
George Lucas said that.
Right, and I think that's the thing, is like you had a guy who for so long, even the things that he didn't write within the Star Wars universe, expanded universe stuff, comics, books, animated cartoon shows, whatever, every buck stopped at him. He had to finally approve over everything, and he had such a set idea in his head of what was Star Wars and what wasn't. And as much as you still have someone like Kathleen Kennedy at the top of the pyramid, it's someone who's coming into it new and is going like, let's open up the idea of what Star Wars can be. I find that very exciting. I was very optimistic that opening Star Wars up to other people would help make it less sacred and make people less angry about Star Wars.
And that happened. That
wildly off base. Right. I mean, I was so certain that was going to happen. It's one of two pop culture predictions I made that were totally wrong. One was
the other one.
Oh, people took the prequel so seriously. They got so angry. There was so much controversy. Now Star Wars will become a much more casual thing to the fandom. My second prediction I was totally wrong on was, oh, it was such a smart move for them to decide to do the Ghostbusters remake with all women, because that will avoid all comparison. I genuinely thought that. I went, oh, well, if it was 4 male actors, everyone would constantly go on and on about how they don't compare. But if it's 4 different like female actresses, like, oh my God, it's gonna be such a different thing, such a different vibe. Everyone will be cool with it.
As someone who worked on
society collapsed.
As someone who worked on the 2016 Ghostbusters movie, I have to abstain from this conversation.
Cotnoir has been behind every important reboot of the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always in favor of people remembering that Star Wars is supposed to be fun, and whether you like a Star Wars thing or not. And I know some people will be like, "What's wrong with taking it seriously? That it's important to you. It means a lot." I'm like, it's just like not healthy to get worked up about it, because I think an interesting thing is like the first Star Wars thing was the original Star Wars, and the next Star Wars thing was the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so from the beginning, the second thing that happened
Ever.
was so completely off model. It was so completely crazy and ridiculous that you really, I think, just have to enjoy what you can. And if you don't enjoy it, then guess what? You live in a world where you have a million opportunities to do whatever you want, in terms of enjoying things, you know?
Well, that's like when people started that like petition online to get Disney to remake The Last Jedi, or to allow fans to remake The Last Jedi, because they were like, we want you to officially classify The Last Jedi as Star Wars Legends so we can make a new movie that is canon.
There's
And it's
still
like,
time.
everything you can do is just not watch that movie you don't like. Like, I think RoboCop is the perfect movie, and there are two sequels I don't like because they go against what I like about the first movie. And I avoided watching them for a long time because I thought it would ruin the first one for me. And then I finally watched them, and I went, yeah, I don't like these.
Mm-hmm.
I will now have fun not watching these movies.
Yeah.
I can just watch the original RoboCop and pretend that's the end of it. It takes very little energy to just not think about the stuff that I don't like when I'm watching the thing I do.
Yeah.
I also have a challenge out there for anybody who thinks they can do better. It's very easy. I mean, look at what Griffin's doing now with his Zoom background. Anybody who wants to can write and perform their version of what they think a great Millennium Falcon cockpit scene is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much, and you won't be judged on the acting, but you just, like, if you really think that you can do Star Wars better, by all means, write and film a 1 minute, 2 minute, 5 minute Millennium Falcon cockpit scene, and just show us what you got. Show us what you got, because what I find is there's a lot of people who have like absolute confidence that they could do it better, and I don't see a lot of examples of people showing that they actually know better. And the thing is, we can account for a little bit of wobbly production value, a little bit of wobbly acting, but if you really know better, there's no easier thing to do. And Lord knows people have the free time now that they can write and produce and upload 5 minute cockpit scenes that show us how it's done.
I mean, beyond that, it costs no money to write a script. You can sit down right now and write any episode 8 you want, and maybe Disney won't officially make it, but you can put it on the internet and anyone can read it and in their mind's eye picture the original actors doing that, can picture whatever special effects battle you describe. Like,
I think
platforming to share your version of Star Wars with the world.
Yeah, but this is why I think the cockpit challenge is important, is because a script, even for professional actors, you read a new script, and it's sometimes, particularly with a visual genre like Star Wars, it can be hard to get the vibe of it, or to know, like, is this really working? Or, you know, like, I remember my best friend and I, when we were in college, someone leaked us a copy of the movie Star Trek Generations, like a year before the movie came out. And we didn't believe it was a real script, because it's the one where Data gets the emotion chip and immediately like loses it.
Yeah.
Like he starts just crying and laughing, and he's like, I'm scared. And like, he's like, it feels so nice here. And we read through the script and we were laughing our heads off because we thought it was a fake script. And then when we saw the movie, we were like, I didn't dislike the movie, but it was so surreal to have acted it out, kind of making fun of it.
Yeah.
So like a script, you can get the tone wrong, but a Millennium Falcon cockpit scene, you can just show us, like, you can make us like hunger for like, oh my God, I wonder what the rest of their Star Wars movie would be like. Because that cockpit scene, it was only 90 seconds long, but it felt like the best Star Wars, like the best version of Star Wars. And I love nothing more than the people who have like Remake The Last Jedi Twitter accounts to like just put out that 90-minute scene and show us, like, you got 90 minutes or 90 seconds. You got like 2 minutes. Show us your best Star Wars. Like, it's very easy for someone to say, I know how to make a good Star Wars. Give us 2 minutes of it. Just give us the 2 minute Star Wars challenge. Just give us your best 2 minutes of Star Wars, and let's see what it's like.
What do you think the role of
the cockpit challenge?
What do you think the role of shows like the George Lucas talk show and iterative art of that form has in the world? I mean, clearly it has the role of bringing a bunch of people together into some sort of shared experience that becomes a community, in that, clearly how fondly your fans feel about the show, that they're not even going to leak like super cool shit.
Yeah.
Also, I have to say, and Patrick can't comment on this as a employee of the Disney Corporation, but I do think it says something that, I mean, we've been listed in the New York Times in the comedy listings enough that I feel confident that at some point someone has said to George Lucas, there's a show where someone pretends to be you. I feel like there's a reasonable chance that over the course of 6 years, someone has said,
I mean,
there's a guy in New York.
There's between the three of us, we know enough people at that company that know about the show and have are very aware of that show. So enough people there know about it, and I think if anybody had a problem with it, the show would not be happening anymore.
They could have shut it down.
Yeah, they could shut it down tonight.
They could.
I think
Get shit down right now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Wow, pick your moment. Really now? This is what we need to be focusing on.
Nothing.
It would be so funny if they shut us down now. It'd be like, oh boy, it's like showing up after the Death Star has been blown up and be like, let me at it. I do think it's great that Lucas himself and Disney, that none of the people with the power to make us stop has tried. Yeah. And I will say this, like, we had contingency plans from the beginning. I've had contingency plans. I'll say this, it wouldn't have worked if you try to, it really is like, Obi-Wan was bluffing and it makes no sense why he said it. But like the thing where he says, if you strike me down, you'll make me more powerful than you can possibly imagine. That is I want to say, that is a line of dialogue in a movie that promises something that was never delivered on. There is not a single scene where nobody thinks that hanging out as a ghost in a swamp and lying about stuff is more powerful than being there fighting with a lightsaber. Nobody thinks that him just hanging around at his friend's swamp apartment is a demonstration of more power. We never got to see the more powerful part. But I do think if Disney or Lucas had ever tried to shut us down, we would have adapted in a way that the show would have lived on, but then we would have been like a scorned creature. Yeah. Because our contingency plans, I think, were funny, and there would have been like shifting the focus of the show in ways that everybody would have got it, and it would have been like bulletproof in terms of they would have achieved nothing. So I'm very grateful that they never tried.
I mean, it's almost Banksy-esque how, well, they have this whole thing about how buildings and public space, it's public space. It belongs to the public. If you put a big-ass ad up there, that means that we can also draw whatever we want up there. Sort of, I find it interesting that you have the same philosophy with these characters, with this fictional world.
So similar to Banksy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, wouldn't it be great if we were Banksy, the three of us?
Oh.
You guys don't know.
Yeah. We're Banksy.
We're Banksy.
Banksy.
And we're Banksy.
On tonight's show.
Yeah.
Lucy's big time.
Yeah.
I didn't know, but
yeah,
they're
these three
Banksy.
individuals, they are Banksy.
I can't believe that they came out as Banksy on the same night that J.K. Rowling made Harry Potter open source.
Oh my god, if only.
You guys know what Banksy's name would be if he was a dog?
Barksy. Where? Come on, Patrick.
Wolfsy?
Is it Barksy?
It's Barks.
I've been on this one for years.
But also in fairness, it could be anything, right?
I guess, but let me have some fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let me have some fairness.
Yeah.
Let me have some fairness. I said in fairness.
Okay. In fairness, I'll have some fun.
Patrick, Patrick,
Let's call the whole thing off.
we can have fun and also be fair.
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
Well, I
Wouldn't
think
that be a good T-shirt? Somebody make T-shirts that say, "There's no fun without fairness."
We also have to get hashtag fun can be fair trending.
fun can be fair.
Hashtag remake The Last Jedi.
Doesn't that sound like the most baffling? Like if you saw someone wearing a shirt that says "There's no fun without fairness," you'd be like, "I don't know if that person's fun or not."
Yeah.
Context, man.
Yeah.
Who's challenging that idea?
Fairness has always been an essential element of fun. Like that'd be a great TED talk. I'm here to talk. For one thing, what do
To a
we call
degree,
the
it
carnival?
has.
We call it the fair.
Oh.
They're one and the same. Fun and fair are the same.
That's why we don't
Yeah,
like
you
people
can't
cheat at games.
Yeah, no, apes
You
also
can't-
have a strong sense of fairness when they've
Yeah.
done experiments where they give them games, and something humans will do too is if they they could get $10 and the other person could get $20 if that person cheats, or neither of them get any money. They will just be like, "Fuck you!" Like no one gets anything, and apes will do similar things.
Pretty
And
fair.
they're right.
Yeah.
Fun and fairness.
Oh.
But with that, I think that why don't we get started on the rewatch of this excellent George Lucas talk show?
And how does this work?
anytime-
We talk over it. We talk over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was sort
That's
of
what we were-
thinking.
yeah.
Anytime
Feel
you
free
have
to just
something to
chime in.
comment on, just chime in. We'll deal with the volume, etc. issues so that people
Yes.
can
Yeah.
hear them.
Are we
Excellent.
ever able to pause? Are we ever
We can
able
pause
to
it.
Absolutely.
pause?
Yeah, we can pause it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just let us know if you want us to pause it, and then we'll pause.
Okay.
Let me grab a White Claw quickly before.
Oh,
we
yeah.
begin.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I gotta loosen it
Yeah,
up.
I'm gonna grab a seltzer.
I'll stay here with you guys.
Oh, thank you
Oh,
for
thank
staying with
you.
us.
Yeah, I got nowhere else to be.
It's the official intermission of the show. Anyone who wants any snacks,
Yeah.
head on down to the lobby, get yourself a nice Coke. Red, official sponsor.
I'm actually going to step away for a second, too.
Oh,
I
Look,
just
Connor's
realized.
back. Look at that. Turn
I
it
just.
off.
Can you hear me when I talk like this?
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I just realized. That, yeah, it's late. My parents went to bed, so it's like.
Guys, while we're here, Mal Blum just added a new item to their Bandcamp shop, and you guys should go check it out because
Ooh,
they're great. And I just got an email about it.
Let me see.
everyone go do that. Mal's really cool. They got their band van broken into when they came to San Francisco.
That is
Oh,
true.
no.
Yeah,
That sucks.
it sucked.
Have
Put
you
a
guys
damn
ever gone to go
wrench.
see? Have you guys ever gone to go see the Yoda statue?
Yes.
Great.
And we saw the San Anselmo
Oh yeah.
duplicate of that Yoda statue that also has an Indiana Jones statue.
Indiana Jones one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
With
I've
weirdly
seen that one.
veiny forearms.
Oh my god, the veiniest forearms. It was like, what?
I just like to think of the sculptor.
Have you been to Rancho Obi-Wan?
Not yet. I
No.
really want to. I have a friend who's
Gotta.
been and loved it, but
We went through the celebration.
Oh, yeah.
Like little,
Sure,
they
sure,
set
sure.
up like a fake little
Yeah.
house and bring out their favorite stuff. So
Very cool.
very cool.
All right, let's do it.
let's do
Excellent.
it.
Well, this is the George Lucas Talk Show with Sonia Manzano, Will Butler, Gray DeLise,
Yes.
and Travis McElroy at New York City Comic Con.
Yeah, here we go. I'm gonna fix that audio. This has been a
This has
How's
been
that for
a
a sec?
slight ongoing issue that has a
There he
very
is.
quick fix to it. We promise.
Look at those wings.
While we're paused,
Yes.
I guess I forgot this was the debut of the 35-foot long Taco Bell Phantom Menace banner,
Banner.
which was this roughly around the time that the show was about to move from Chelsea to Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah.
Or had it already happened?
No, I think it happened in not Chelsea, East Village.
Yeah, from East Village to.
Yeah, I think it was around then, something like that. I
So,
don't
so
remember
we knew we were in this big room, and we knew we needed a strong visual element, and so on eBay, someone was selling this banner that was designed to be on the outside of a Taco Bell. That's how big that banner is. It's for the
Wow.
outside of a Taco Bell.
Wow.
So it's very like durable because it's like wind and rain resistant and all this. And someone was selling it for, I think, $200. But they said you could also make an offer. And so I said, I'm going to offer half of that. And they accepted within seconds. And but I got that banner for $100, thinking like, ooh, this will be a big thing in Comic-Con. And it was. But then now on the stage at Hell's Kitchen, we would just first we tried hanging it along the back, but that became so much work that now we just lay it on the floor at the front of the stage.
I also knocked it down a couple of times when you hung it up.
Yeah.
On the back wall. When I would enter, I would knock it down.
But I thought it was so funny because my read was that somebody was probably I imagine there was like a guy who owned this who was now like married or in some sort of relationship where his partner was telling him like, we're never going to have a place to hang up this 35-foot Phantom Menace banner. You have to get rid of it.
We finally bought our home. It definitively does not have enough room to cover this banner.
Yeah. It is one of those things that like it's good to own something so stupid and have a real genuine purpose for it. Like I would say that we have given it, like in the same way that you were saying, Griffin, about how Watto has 15 minutes of screen time as a character, but you've given him hours of life as a character. In some ways, you own the character more than Lucasfilm or Disney own it, I would say.
I sent a cease and desist. I'm trying to
I think there's
Watto.
I think like if we can claim a moral right that you own Watto, then pretty soon we'll have that mouse of theirs.
Right. What have they done with him recently? I've been spending the time.
But I do think that like it's funny to think that this was made probably to be up around the outside of a Taco Bell for 1 month in 1999, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And now we every month for a couple of years now have like lovingly displayed it in a show that is a 4-minute walk from the Great White Way, Broadway. like it is legitimately showcased on the stage of an off-Broadway theater.
Right,
Like
Here we go.
I want you to imagine driving past a Taco Bell in 1999, looking up at a banner and thinking, I wonder if that banner will ever be in an off-Broadway show.
Can I ask, does it usually take an hour and 40 minutes for the watch-along to start?
No.
Well, this is the first one.
This is the first one, so I guess usually it does.
Fair enough. So then we're setting a very bad standard.
I don't know if it's bad or good. I think
it's been great.
I think
Everyone's
the audience has been freaking loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess here it goes.
But yeah.
Hello, everybody. No, it's joke. It's cosplay. I, of course, am
out on camera with Vin Diesel mask and claiming that it's cosplay. That is a very complicated bit that Watto is doing.
come here to a Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con 2018 to present the George Lucas show. So how many people here have ever been to a taping of the George Lucas show before? Great, roughly 4%. Okay. We all know George Lucas, who not only is the most successful filmmaker in history, but the most successful comedian in history. He, of course, created the most profitable joke in history. I have a bad feeling about this. And so after he was forced into a retirement, when Disney stole Star Wars from him, a midnight theft, took it right out from under his nose with the indignity of only paying him $6 billion. George decided to spread his wings, if you catch my drift. And I have wings. And try applying his unparalleled success and artistic, I don't know, adeptness to other fields. So we've been doing the George Lucas talk show for about a couple of years now, right? About a couple of years. Of course, started with Jar Jar Binks as a sidekick, and then Jar Jar got staffed on PBS's Wrecked. Part of the room on that. So, I'm always buddies with Jordan. Obviously, you know my work as an actor, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones.
We thought we weren't sure what the audience makeup was going to be at this panel. We were like worried about how many of our regular show attendees were going to also attend Comic-Con. We didn't know what it was going to be, and then it turns out that the room was full, but mostly with people who had never seen the George Lucas talk show before.
Oh, wow.
So I felt like some obligation to try to explain what they were about to see.
It also strikes me that like it's true that Sean Diston went out to LA and he got staffed on the CBS show Wrecked. But if you don't know that that's a true thing, it almost sounds like you're very close. You're very close to making like a Dennis Miller joke.
I was gonna say,
or it's like maybe a half a reference away from being like, it's like if Jar Jar Binks was on CBS as Wrecked.
I started out sort of the corporate side of Lucasfilm, production accountant, and then moved my way up to production. And then since then, I've mostly stayed behind the scenes. Let's see. Let's do a little crowd work. Right? That's what you're doing. You there? What's your name? How do you know when you're finished? You there with these swords? Yes. Oh, they're nunchucks. Hold on 1 second. Nightwing, I'm so sorry. Not used to playing to this deeper room. How are you doing tonight? Doing great. Great. That's crowd work, right? Let's start the show.
Filmmaker George Lucas.
Hello, I'm George Lucas, creator of Star Wars. I want to thank everybody for coming out to the George Lucas Talk Show Comic-Con edition. I wasn't sure we were gonna do this. Well, it's been a while since I've been working on my museum in Los Angeles, which is should be open in a year or two.
George, you sound more winded than usual. It's almost as if you're mostly used to playing, I don't know, 80-seat comedy theaters.
I'm in my early 70s. It's reasonable.
True. I would have done the whole high five thing, but we all know one was recovering from a herniated disc.
I'm not used to this big a room. It's a lot to ask of a 70-some-year-old man. I want to thank you all for coming out here. I do want to take the temperature of the room because I'm genuinely not sure what people think of me anymore. I know there was a time when people were very angry with me.
Hero in Star Wars, they say.
That's what I said, but now everyone's mad, and they're saying they want some people mostly incels, are saying that they want me back. They want me to make another Star Wars movie.
Ryan Johnson, more like Lion Johnson.
No, I won't have a backward set against Ryan.
J.J. Abrams, more like not even okay, Abrams.
Before you criticize The Last Jedi, I encourage you all to take a good look at The Brothers Bloom, available on DVD. It's a fine film, a fine caper. He also made that.
Is it just genuinely you plugging Brothers Bloom?
Yeah. Matter of fact, when I tweet about The Brothers Bloom, let's get it trending for Comic-Con.
Everyone, take out your phone. Hashtag give me the brothers.
Now, of course, I wanted to make a Star Wars movie about microbiotics.
The shadows of Star Wars.
I wanted to make a movie about things so small you can't see them. Everyone want to see that? I want to ask. This might be controversial. Who's mad about The Last Jedi? It's okay if you are. Who's mad about it? Stand up. Show yourselves. All right.
Leia herself!
All right. Do you want me? Let me ask you this. Do you want me to make a Star Wars movie? This guy's not happy with that. Okay, smart guy. Who do you want to make Star Wars? You're so smart.
He just said no, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
How about Quentin Tarantino?
Yeah! Oh, great. Yeah, he's going to put the N-word in it. That's what this guy wants. That's what this guy wants.
I thought the racial politics of that
No thanks. No thanks. No thanks.
Wow. I have to say,
Fine filmmaker.
I was even quicker than I remembered. That was lightning fast. And I'll say this. Okay, so my first joke was basically at the expense of incels. Almost instantly. That guy says, I said, who do you want to make Star Wars? He says Quentin Tarantino. And I said, great, he's going to put the N-word in Star Wars. And I mean, I love Quentin Tarantino. Yeah. I can't imagine how insane a Star Wars movie by him would be. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's what that guy wants. He thinks that's what will finally make him happy. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Anyway, I can't believe I just didn't hesitate at all to make that joke in that room.
We already have enough issues in the Star Wars world. We don't need that. Okay. Does anyone here want me to make a Star Wars movie? Anybody wants me to make one? Say it now. Nobody? Nobody? You? All right, let me ask you a question. Do you see Red Tails? Because if you didn't, I'm not interested. You gotta support all my movies. This is good. You see Red Tails? You know what it is? Opening weekend, thank you. It's about the Tuskegee Airmen. All right, they were heroes. And it's a good movie.
If you saw Strange Magic opening weekend, stand up now.
I bet most people here, and this is a nerd convention, don't even know what Strange Magic is.
I asked again because the only explanation is that they didn't hear me. If you saw Strange
Who saw Strange Magic? Did anyone here see Strange Magic?
Literally no.
Yeah, some people over here. On purpose? Strange Magic was the movie when Disney tricked me into selling them Star Wars. I tricked them. I said, you have to also release this CGI animated jukebox musical about fairies who live in the woods. And then they tricked me by releasing it. They released it on Touchstone Pictures, which isn't even a thing anymore. You can't find that movie on Blu-ray. You can only find it on DVD and digital.
It broke box office.
It broke box office records. If you don't know about it, all right. The same year that Star Wars, The Force Awakens, set the box office record for the highest-grossing movie of the year. Strange Magic set the box office record for the lowest-grossing CGI animated musical to be released on 3,000 screens.
Here's a fully genuine question. Raise your hand if you had not heard about strange magic until
This is my final film. Shame on you.
I have been out of pocket outside the studio system and truly independent.
I made it. And do any of you have daughters? Let me ask you that. Do any of you have daughters? Shame on you, sir. I made this. I said that I made Star Wars for boys and I made strange magic for girls. So shame on you. Shame on you for not
Walk out of here, Google it, and you will find that George Lucas said it.
Now, let me say this. I want you to tweet about the Brothers Bloom. I also want you to tweet some variation of the sentence. I learned about strange magic, George Lucas' final film at Comic-Con 2018. All right. Well,
No one ever tweeted that.
bring out our guests because we've got a sterling panel of guests here, and we've staged this terribly, ladies and gentlemen, because the stairs.
Good camera work.
But all of our guests are over there. So I'm going to ask you to be more enthusiastic than you actually are, and I want you to carry the length of their journey. And I don't know if there's any music. We didn't have a cue for this, but I don't know if there's any music that you can just play by default when the guests are walking over, but I'm very concerned about this transition. If not, then respectful silence from the music will be the choice of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring up our panel of guests. Sonia Manzano. David Lyle. Travis McElroy.
Was booking this performance pretty easy? Were people interested?
Yeah. I mean, Connor booked Will, and I think I booked the other three, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's always hard. It's always hard with Comic-Con because you apply and then they spend months deciding whether or not you can do it, and then when they tell you, they give you like a week and a half to give them the names to get badges, and so once you get past that week and a half, it becomes harder to book guests who aren't already attending Comic-Con.
Yeah.
So I think we booked Will and Sonia, who were not going to be at Comic-Con for any other reason. And then we ran out of time. And then we were like, well, now we have to find who are the good guests who are already going to be at Comic-Con for some reason.
But then
which is hard because if they're already at Comic-Con, they're already kind of busy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like our show this year was at 9:30 or something like that. So getting people to stay until 9:30 is tough. Or you're
this one you're watching was at 7:30.
Yeah.
And so people did it as their last thing of the evening. For 2019, I actually think we got rejected. I have a theory. I think we got rejected and then added when they realized they'd rejected us because our slot happened, I think, 2.5 hours after things started closing.
Yeah.
So this year, the fact that we had a good size audience was really a testament to the fact that people were willing to wait for hours after everything ended to then come to this panel.
Because I think the convention floor closed at 8 and our show started at 9:30. It was essentially asking people to stay at the Javits Center with nothing else to do for 90 minutes. As opposed to if you're at 7:30, which used to be the last slot that like a panel would start, it's like you're rolling straight from doing something else to a show.
Yeah.
And to keep that energy in the room while the panel becomes acclimated to the environment up here on the dais, I promised that everyone who came to this panel would get a prize. And I have prizes here. I've got prizes. I got a box. Who wants a puzzle? Who wants a puzzle box? I'm going to throw this. I'm going to throw it. That's how it's going to happen. Some of these prizes are heavy. Right? I've signed nothing. But
I fully dropped the George Lucas impression by this point.
I think we did. Wada, do you want to talk a little bit about what we're going to give everybody a bit of film history?
We got a lot of Star Wars fans here in the house, I assume. and despite the divisive response to the new recent fan fiction films that Disney's been releasing, I assume we have some J.J. Abrams fans in the house.
Felicity. New version of you. You should watch Felicity. If you watched The Force Awakens and you didn't watch Felicity, you didn't do your homework. You don't understand that film unless you watch all seasons of Felicity. All right?
Now, do we have any fans in the house of a certain Bad Robot J.J. Abrams production that starred Harrison Ford? Anyone here? Anyone here? Morning Glory?
We have a 35mm trailer from the original release of Morning Glory.
Well,
And
this is your
everyone here is
favorite
gonna
bit,
get a
mentioning
piece.
other things from Disney stuff.
I love Morning Glory. It's such a good
Jeff Goldblum, a light dramedy about news journalism.
And I know that a lot of things have been thrown out of canon. There are a lot of Star Wars legends, and we're all getting used to the new universe. But I'm willing to say that I think Morning Glory might be a late period addition in the Star Wars canon.
Legends.
No, I think it might be, because it's a Bad Robot production, and I think we're seeing a descendant of Ben Solo. Let's be optimistic.
My favorite thing about stuff like this is that the guests just have no idea what's going on. Like Sonia Manzano has no idea what's going on.
This is the moment where she is questioning whether or not doing this show was a good decision on her part. If any of this is gonna make sense.
Also, you might be questioning, because obviously here we're implying that Ben Solo had a child.
Oh yeah.
But so this means a lot of people were shocked to learn that Palpatine had sex. Now we find out that Ben Solo did too.
Little Easter egg for the fans.
My question, which is my typical question for Forrest, who are these people who are on this panel?
Who are the people on stage?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Yes, please.
Or Forrest can tell you whatever.
I just asked the room generally.
Will Butler, who's sitting next to Connor, is in Arcade Fire.
Yeah.
Travis McElroy, who's next to Will, is one of the hosts of My Brother and Me. He's done a whole bunch of podcasts.
Massively successful podcaster.
Yeah. Sonia Manzano was on Sesame Street for 40 years. She played Maria.
Yeah, 1971 to
Gray,
2015.
Yeah, she was there a very long time. And then Gray on the end is a very massively successful voice actress. She's in everything. She's Daphne on Scooby-Doo. She's been Daphne for 20 years. But she's in everything.
She was in the
She's
Clone
the
Wars.
babysitter on Fairly Odd Parents, Vicky.
Yeah.
She was on
She's
the Green
one of those
Adventures
people
Billy
you've
and
heard
Mandy.
8,000 times without recognizing it's the same person.
Yeah.
And why did you pick these individuals?
Because I love getting weird people together who have no connection to each other. That's
And it's also
and they all said yes.
It's also people are always suggesting to us guests who have a Star Wars or a George Lucas connection. But to me, it's more funny to have people who don't have an obvious connection, and then we figure out what it's going to be. You know,
the only one who does have an obvious Gray, I think, was on the
Detours.
Jenny Tarkovsky Clone Wars, and then
Yeah.
she's in the Lego Star Wars show too, or something like that.
But also, wasn't she in Detours as well?
Oh yeah, and she was in Detours too.
Oh.
Because that was part of the news in this. We spent a lot of time. That was the genuine news that the show made, was that we announced there is a secret Star Wars show that George Lucas worked on that was a comedy series called Detours.
It's so
This is
weird.
real.
He personally produced, how many episodes was it, Griffin? It was
They made 50.
Yeah.
they made 50 fully animated episodes of a Star Wars
Never
comedy
narrowed.
show. And
Disney bought it, and he said good news, here's a fully produced cartoon show, and they were like, we are never showing this to people. We would rather bury this.
and so we announced at this Comic-Con that it was being released, and we told people to tweet about it, and they did. And then there was a German sci-fi website heard this through some way, and it got sort of mistranslated, and they basically wrote a real article saying that George Lucas that we'd announced that Disney was going to release Detours in 2019 or something.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Was that one of the proudest moments?
Not really.
I mean, we were,
But to Connor's point, like in terms of trying to get guests who are further away from Star Wars rather than those who are closer, I feel like one of Connor's best games he does comedically as Lucas is trying to find a way to take credit for anything they've done in their career. And the further away they are from Star Wars, the more he likes the challenge of how can I make it seem like this thing they did was actually a reference or an homage to something I did. The other part of that is all the time we'll have guests backstage and their worry is, what should I pretend? Like, I'm a big Star Wars fan. Should I not pretend I'm a Star Wars fan? Or I hate Star Wars. Should I act like I like it? Or I know nothing about it. Should I pretend like I know everything? And the thing we always say is, treat him however you would treat the real George Lucas. Like, your relationship in real life to Star Wars is what you should represent on stage. It's not a problem if you're a mega fan. It's not a problem if you know nothing. So it's fun to have like a wide array of people from different backgrounds with different levels of Star Wars fandom.
Probably have some kids, and then thousands of years later, one of them will become a distinguished network anchor who has to work on a morning news program.
I don't want to make an omelet. I thought you would know that was pretty funny.
I should say that the opening strip of this says programming with R and appropriate PG-13 films, so be careful. What's on your script? Are we passing it around? Let's go ahead and pass those film scripts around while we talk. Hello, panel. Welcome to the George Lucas Talk Show. Thank you so much for coming here. I'm gonna talk to you all throughout this, but also feel free to chime in at any point. How does it feel to be up on the panel? Does everyone feel comfortable and good?
It's terrific. I love it.
Thank you.
I'm just very jealous of Sonya's coat.
It's a very shiny coat.
It's okay. I wear this when I don't care what I look like. I just had a few beers last night and I thought I'd keep the pop.
You almost look like a droid in that. That looks like one of those silver droids I don't remember the name of.
It was a source of inspiration.
Well, thank you. Well, you certainly inspired generations of people from your work on Sesame Street.
Yeah.
Mr. Lucas, I have a question for you. I was wondering if when Frank Oz auditioned, did he audition as Grover when he auditioned for Yoda?
Yeah, Yoda's just Grover. A lot of people don't know that. He's just like, what if Grover was a little more mature? Like when he's playing pranks in that first scene, that's like a teenage Grover. That's what Grover will be like if he ever progressed. And then old Grover when he gets sick. I mean, we don't like to think about these characters existing on the timeline, but they're mortal.
Wait, so is Grover a descendant of Yoda?
Yes, that's how it works.
Whoa.
Yeah, at some point, Yoda hooked up with somebody blue and very fuzzy, and so eventually became moderately fuzzy. But like, you have to imagine whoever it was with Yoda was like extreme, just like a hair dryer on a cat, kind of like that fuzzy. But that's how it works.
Well, you did a great job, and we love seeing him in your movie, sir.
Oh well, thank you so much. And now, Travis, you're on a show that's called My Brother and Me.
Right.
I have to confess that the working title for the first Star Wars movie, I mean, it had a number of working titles, but the working title for it was My Father, My Sister, and Me.
That was actually our inspiration.
Yeah, and we decided to spoiler it, that's spoilery.
I mean, our whole show is just like a Star Wars fantastic. Like, you all listen, right? You just talk about Star Wars. We do actually talk about Star Wars a lot. That started as a joke, but as I said it, I was like, no way, we do. Yeah, we do talk about Star Wars.
What's your hottest take about Star Wars? And don't hold back.
My hottest take?
Your hottest take on Star Wars. What's the opinion you hold about Star Wars that you think that's dangerous? Like this guy with his parents.
I don't have any hot takes at all about anything, let alone Star Wars. I'm just happy to be here.
Now, Will.
Yeah.
You ever write a song about Star Wars?
Many.
Really?
100?
100 songs about Star Wars?
More than 100?
When you say, at first I was thinking I should be pleased, but if I was still in charge, I'd be calling my lawyer right now. 100's too many, you're violating the trademark.
Only on Blu-ray.
Only on Blu-ray. Actually, one of the prizes I think we're going to give away right now, I don't know if anyone has a pen, but I got Will's solo album Friday Night. And this could be more appropriate. It's actually Friday night right now. You got a pen? You know what? Do you like this? Do you have a record player? Yeah. Okay, that's how this works. Always bring a pen with you, and always like everything. Right. You want it signed? You want it signed by just Will or by everybody on the panel? Great. All right. All right. Now, Will. Now, did you see Star Wars as a kid? Was it anything you liked?
I was born after the first two, before the last one.
Wait. So you were okay.
I was born after Star Wars.
What?
I was born in. Hold on. I was alive for Return of the Jedi.
Okay, that's the sixth movie. Will, you're good.
Oh.
Are you a looper? You couldn't possibly. This is. If you were born after the first two, but before the.
To be honest, I thought you did Goonies, and that's why I'm here. But then
my buddy Steve produced Goonies. My buddy Steve
was standing over there, I was Googling it, so I was like, maybe we can say Goonies are good enough. And I was like, oh, God.
I mean, we can still do it. My buddy Steve produced Goonies, and I wouldn't mind if y'all think Goonies are good enough at the end of this. Casually throughout the thing.
I did think of a hot take. I think he walks up great. I don't know if that's hot or not. Is that hot or not? I know that a lot of people have beef with Ewoks. They think they're dumb.
I don't think they think that anymore. I think people moved on.
Yeah. Have we all grown to accept Ewoks? You know, I think we've all really grown as people.
Now, Greg, you're a very, very successful voice actor. You do so many shows. And you do a lot of Star Wars voices.
I do, but I don't know anything about the movies. I feel embarrassed to say that.
It's okay. It's okay.
I'm sorry, your work is so important. I know, but I should know more. I just found out it was a Mandalorian a little while ago. I didn't even know that.
Now, do you know what that is? You know what Mandalorian is?
Not really. I played the bounty hunter on that game, and somebody's like, "And you're Mandalorian." I was like, "Really? Wow, I've been doing it for 10 years, and I just realized that."
Wow. Well, the thing is, those characters don't know anything about Star Wars movies.
It's very method. I'm just a very method actor.
Yeah. Now, when you do a Star Wars voice, like when they tell you to be a bounty hunter, what kind of voice do you do?
She kind of talks a little bit like this. She's kind of like a female Clint Eastwood or something. She's Clint Eastwood.
That's great. That's really good. I have a terrible voice. I sound horrible. But how many different voices do you think you do?
Oh gosh, probably like hundreds.
I do little tiny girls like this and babies
I play little old ladies like this who don't know anything about Star Wars at all.
And I play Daphne on Scooby-Doo. Jeepers, I've been doing that for a really long time.
If I can offer up one correction, though, the old lady would probably know about Star Wars, but we'd have to go on.
You're right, it's pretty old at this point.
Well, all right, I'm going to throw a character at you, and I want to see if you can come up with a voice. Let's say I had a character, and he's a droid, but he's super dumb. And the line of dialogue he says is, "I don't like how hot it is in here." And he's wrong about it. The temperature's perfect. That's how dumb he is.
Very, very robotic-like.
Now, Sonia, I want to show a little clip of something because you've done something that very few people have done, which is that you've acted with Star Wars characters in a non-Star Wars property.
I did?
Yeah. let's show the
welcome to Sesame Street.
So that's where we are, Sesame Street. But why did you bring me here? Oh, you and your secret missions.
You understood what he just said?
Oh, yes, indeed. He just said he's on one of his types of secret missions. He has an important message to deliver to someone here on Sesame Street. Oh, I do beg your pardon. I am C3 PO. And this is my counterpart, R2D2. R2, come back at once. Where are your manners? You can give your message later. Besides, after traveling 50 parsecs in that capsule, we could both do with a little refreshment. Of course I'm right.
You want some refreshments? Well, why don't you come into the store? I mean, I can give you some coffee or like a ham sandwich. But I mean, well, what do you guys eat?
I know what they like to eat. Probably canned food, cans and all.
All I wait. I'll get very speaking of goodness.
And for your friend here?
A glass of grape fluid and a bottle.
Oh, great.
You don't need the store, you need the fix-it shop.
Oh, we'll get it.
Oh, how interesting.
Oh, that's a tree.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've never been on a planet like this before. Tell me, how many moons do you have?
We have one.
Only one? Well, I suppose it's two. A tree.
Here we are. Where do you want it?
Oh, could we start with my shoulders? Oh, heavens, that's nice. Now the neck. A little lower, please. Oh, ecstasy. Now
Those are Me Too moments.
and now the knees. Oh, that's good. Now the ankles. Oh, I feel like a new droid. Oh, yes, I'll do your turn next.
Well, okay. How does he drink this?
Oh, well, just pour it in.
That's how it works.
No, wait,
That's right.
Just pour it straight in a hole in the top.
I can't take you anywhere.
What did he say?
He said, thanks, I needed that.
That was marvelous. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You have absolutely jarred my memory. I can remember it was the storyline was that R2D2 fell in love with the fire hydrant. Yes, and now I remember that it was a marvelous day, and Darth Vader was on the show as well. You have that as well?
I don't have that clip.
Oh, okay.
Who did Darth Vader fall in love with?
No, he didn't fall in love with anyone, but he was,
He's been hurt a lot. Wife died in childbirth, his friend threw him in a volcano. Spoilers, sorry.
I just want to watch Darth Vader and Big Bird interview.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand you. I don't understand you either. What is this? What is happening?
Yeah, so
That's what they sound like, right? Darth Vader and Big Bird, they have to go in.
now why haven't you done more voice work? Those are great voices.
I only have the one, and it's also weird.
Well, it's interesting that R2D2 fell in love with a fire hydrant because, notoriously, fire hydrants are soaked in urine for dogs. Who seem to that's a rare insight into the, R2D2 has very specific interests. And you wouldn't think of all places that you would have learned about that on Sesame Street.
I felt like Dorothy oiling up the Tin Man when I saw that image there.
Do you remember filming that? Was it fun when you were filming
Yes,
that?
it was fun, and I completely forgot about it until I see it now. You had mentioned it, and I showed it to me. I did not ever remember it.
Yeah, and that's canon. Like, I don't care. You can throw out all the books. You can, I'll fight for that one. Like, you can throw out everything, all the video games, all the books. I don't care. But they did go to Earth, and C-3PO was an absolute idiot about trees. Like, this guy knows every language. He's been to Endor. He knows.
Why does this take place canonically? Because they saw it, I was like, oh, a tree.
I mean, whenever it was filmed, it has to be pre-Jedi because, if you go to Endor and you don't know what a tree is, you haven't been paying attention.
As best as I could figure, it's between Revenge of the Sith and Rogue One because he's gold, but hadn't been to Yavin 4 yet, where he would have learned
Yeah,
what
and,
a tree was.
and you're exactly right to call that out because most of the time C-3PO has only known sand. And the idea that something could grow from sand, I mean, he's never seen a mirage, you know? He's never gotten, because he doesn't experience thirst. He just has joint ache.
Where I talk to D2 is perpetually thirsty. As we
It is the one time I've ever seen him drink, so probably like for all the movies is like, I'm dying for a cup of water.
Well, let me spill some tea here. This was the period where R2 was hitting the bottle pretty hard. And he kept on asking to have it written into the script, so that's why he was the bartender in Jabba's palace. And then he goes and says, yeah, give me iced tea.
I find it weird to know that R2-D2 fell in love with the fire hydrants because I've always considered R2-D2 and C-3PO together. That's what I've always thought.
They have
This is my counterpart, and I'm like, okay.
They have an arrangement.
Fire hydrants are okay.
Yeah,
It's like one celebrity list, and
they made a list on TV like fire hydrants. and I think C-3PO, who didn't even know that trees existed, had no idea that if they go to Earth, there's going to be fire hydrants everywhere. So like he gave him like a hall pass all the time. And that, you know, I would make that movie if anyone from Disney is listening. A movie about how C-3PO and R2-D2 go on a romantic getaway, and R2 tricks him to make a little list, and he's like, fire hydrant. I wonder who C-3PO, who would be on C-3PO's list? I haven't even considered that before.
David Niven?
David Niven?
Seems like he's kind of...
That makes sense.
He's looking for the fire hydrant that squirts, you know.
That's a myth. That's a myth. That's not what that doesn't happen. That's not what that is. Now, who else brought their own pen? Yes, you at the very end. Would you be interested in Sonia's book, Becoming Maria, signed by either just Sonia or by everyone on the pen? Everyone? Everyone in the room? Okay, I'm on board with that. Pass this around. Honestly, I'm going to pass this around. Everyone's going to sign this book. Okay? And it looks like a new book. Have a great summer. This is going to be a real collector's item.
I want to be on Antiques Roadshow in 150 days.
400 people, including a future president. Hopefully, if the country survives.
Hey, we did it. We did it. Pause. That joke holds up.
That joke does hold up.
That joke holds up. 2018. I mean, we called it before then, but, you know. All right, back to it.
This is, you know, everything that's happening was in that trilogy, where people were so busy talking about other things.
This is how democracy dies, to thunderous applause.
Yeah.
And people say he can't write.
Yes. Yes. Now, Will, your musical influences, because like music's a very important part of, I've changed the way music is used in movies. It's like American Graffiti was really the first movie to have use a soundtrack to popular music the way that I used it. Have you benefited at all from, like Arcade Fire has had songs in movies. Do you benefit from that? That's lucrative, right?
It's very lucrative.
Yeah.
I once lost an Oscar with Karen Williams. Lost an Oscar.
I lost an Oscar.
Yeah.
What are Oscar losers? I got an honorary one.
Wait, you mean you lost, like, you didn't win or you lost it?
I didn't win, and then they just gave me one, a general one, which says don't.
I won and I lost mine.
You won and you lost it. You misplaced it. Well, that's a different story. That's very sad.
Did they replace it? Will they give you a new one if you lost it?
Just give me one of John Williams.
Did you meet John
Sorry,
Williams?
if we can pause really briefly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was trying to remember what was going on here. I asked Patrick to bring me the chicken tenders that I had stacked backstage. This was a period for a couple of months where my running bit was trying to have Watto eat different foods during the show and hiding it in different places, introducing foods midway through the show. And I had gone to the Comic-Con, the Javits Center cafeteria right before it closed down and tried to get anything I could. So I got a plastic cup full of red wine and chicken tenders. But also, you can see, just to point this out for the rest of the video, the yarmulke that I usually wear as Watto has fallen off my head and is just hanging off of the back of my fairy wings. You see a red blob on my wings, and that's a yarmulke.
You talked to him about?
I talked to him about nothing.
About nothing?
I think he's met a lot of people in his life.
Right. And you didn't contribute. What'd you say? Good job?
I felt like it was like eating a Pope or something.
Right.
Just his hand and then you lost wonderway.
Yeah. You didn't ask
Can't
any
look away
questions?
from the yarmulke.
No. Your lips are so soft, and I was like, thank you, sir.
Always very nice man. Yeah, great to work with. Now, Ray, you worked on a series that I want to talk about because, there's a lot of, the big news is they're talking about they're slowing down the Star Wars. They're not going to make them as many or as often as they were. And there is a Star Wars project that you worked on called Star Wars Detours.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and it's there. It's just sitting there, waiting to be. How many years ago did you make that?
About 7 years.
Because I worked on that. I was part of that.
You were?
Yeah.
Pause.
George Lucas worked on that.
Yeah.
I do genuinely think that maybe now is the moment to tell Disney to release Star Wars Detours.
They should. They have the news service.
Yeah.
They have Disney Plus. I know. You think they will?
No, zero chance.
But right now, when production has come to a halt, the fact that they're sitting on
offline.
No, but I'm just saying it just occurs to me that a studio in this moment, when everyone is like, how are we going to ever produce things again? And a studio's like, we have 40 episodes of a Star Wars thing that George Lucas did, and it's funny that they shouldn't, like, there should be a massive pressure campaign to be like, we can't leave our houses, release it.
Do you think that animation is going to have a boom because of all of this?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm really excited for that.
Yeah.
And
because you were heavily involved, you had to camp out for all the writers. A lot of them like to camp for you. And
yeah, and it's kind of a funny show. It's fun, right?
Yeah, I thought it was fun.
But it's not being released, and so why don't we take this moment to? I really want to encourage everybody who has a phone and social media. Let's talk about how the buzz at Comic-Con 2018 is that, here, I'll just say it, and then you can honestly say, I heard somebody say that Disney Lucasfilm is going to release Star Wars Detours this Christmas. That's the buzz. And I think if everybody starts tweeting it, and then people start everyone here retweets everyone else's tweets. That's like that thing with the guy who comes into the kingdom and asks for a chessboard where it's 1 grain of sand on the first piece and then doubled it all the way, and then we know the story that he takes away all the grain in the kingdom. That's what we have Twitter-wise. And then they'll release it and we'll know that it was just what we did in this room tonight that made it happen.
I thought my life was going to change when I got that thing. I'm like, I got a George Lucas project. Oh my God. He was like, very involved.
Your life is going to change. We're going to make it happen.
Yes. Nothing happened for 7 years.
Craig, do you remember any of the characters who played or the scenes you had to act for that show?
Yes. Well, I played a waitress that kind of sounded like she was just kind of like a ditzy blonde.
Oh, it's actually Judge Diner. Yes, we all know dogs.
I think I played a computer voice that sounded a lot like this, and kind of like Siri. And I think I played an old maid robot, like a maid robot. Anyway.
I think she was German or something. She had a little bit of an accent,
So I don't know. Yeah. But see, this is old.
Germans are always bad guys in my movies. I hate the Nazis. Not current day Germans, but World War II era Germans. Indiana Jones saw us fighting them.
Goonies are Italian, right? The bad guys are Italian.
Yeah, but I didn't make Goonies. That's my buddy Steve. He didn't direct me.
Well, that's
axes count.
Yeah, both axes count, definitely. Although Goonies was well after Mussolini's reign. Yeah. Now, whenever you're working on music, do you ever borrow, like, if I start to do a Star Wars theme, could we write a song together now? Would that work? You think you and I could write a song together, like if I started going like,
Probably.
yeah, but I don't do the music for the Star Wars movies, so you'll forgive me. If I sit down like oh, you brought a little keyboard. Was that just there, or did you bring it? Oh, we got the beats. Hold that up to the mic. Hold that up, right up to the mic. I want you to play that some more, and I want people to remember that.
You're supposed to be playing like a melody or something, right?
I have a treasure here. This is from 1999. This is a Taco Bell wrapper from the Phantom Menace. If you want to come up to the audience mic and ask questions, that's permissible.
Especially if you want to pitch a Star Wars story, now that Disney isn't making them anymore. Pitch for a non-canonical, sideways Star Wars expansion film.
If anyone wants to stand up at that microphone, you can ask questions of any of the guests. You can ask questions of me or Watto, or you can not do that.
And I'll talk about any of my previous projects.
But everyone who asks a question is going to get something up until I run out of things. Yes, sir. For me, George Lucas.
The true and honest George Lucas.
Yeah. There's no reason to say all this.
Now, what would you think is, so, you made Jar Jar the Sith Lord, right? You had that in mind when you were doing this, the whole thing, right?
You're asking me if Jar Jar is a Sith?
Jar Jar is the Sith Lord.
That's a fan theory. That's not canon, buddy.
If I can butt in for a second, you seem pretty absolute in your theory that Jar Jar is a Sith, do you not?
I mean, did you not see that Force jump?
Right, but what I heard, George, is that only a Sith deals in absolutes.
That's a card with ports on it, and that's yours. All right, hello, sir.
Hi, this question's for Sonia. What was your favorite moment filming on Sesame Street?
Oh, I guess it was when I got married on the show. And we were up on the roof and we sang a song to each other, and it was very emotional. It was great. I was 4 months pregnant at the time. Just made it into that wedding dress. But that was it.
Awesome, thank you. I have a question for Travis.
Yes, hi.
In earlier interviews as well as panels earlier today, something interesting and in space theme, perchance, to do for a D&D adventure. And I was wondering if that, why not make this the bridge for George Lucas? And you know,
are you saying I should play D&D with George Lucas? I think
that is
good. I think that's great.
Well, why not have this be the new Star Wars?
Wait, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you want to make the Adventures of the new Star Wars, I'm totally okay with that.
I mean, with all due respect, it sounds more like we'd be doing something in the Willow-verse. Right? Yeah, we should be dealing with Upgood there, you know? Willow Upgood? If it's D&D, right?
You know, Willow, I know. Have we all seen Willow? Willow? Yeah. It's great. You should watch Willow. Really good. Highly recommend. I named my cat Willow, not after that Willow, but it's connected. I named her after Willow Rosenberg from Buffy.
All willows are good willows. Yeah. Weeping. Pussy. Man. It's a kind of, it's not vulgar. I know people just laugh at that, but it's just a kind of willow.
Cat, it's a cat, pussy willow.
Hi, Sir Lucas.
I'm not a knight.
Not yet.
You're very revered.
Thank you.
Can you just please give Padme a leg sir?
Sure, yeah. She has one. You just never showed it. Yeah.
How?
Yeah, she doesn't use it that often. It's like she's got it there, but you know, it just wasn't part of the story. You know, it was never a reason for her to fight. So there was a scene where she's just in her room and she's like, oh yeah, I have that. And then I was like, do we need this scene? She never fights with it. She just says, I have that, I own it. That was the dialogue. I wrote her say, I have that, I own that, this is mine.
If she had that, she would beat Anakin's ass like immediately.
Oh, she loved Anakin. She would know that. Yeah, she's very.
She knew he was an asshole.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that relationship was so troubled.
Well, I'm wearing the outfit that she wore after, like, he murdered a bunch of Sand people, so, you know.
I'm gonna give you Radioland Murders on Laserdisc.
Yes. George, what do you think of Disney's bastardization of your baby, Howard the Duck?
Well, no, Howard Duck's not my baby. That's a Marvel property that I brought to life when I invented the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Everybody said, oh, it's a big bomb. I said, just wait. Just wait. It's planting a seed now that's going to create the biggest, most successful movies of all time, and you don't even know it, and you won't even remember me when it happens. And I won't get the credit, that's fine, but I know what I'm doing. I'm making the flop of this year, but the mega hits of tomorrow. What? On what? On Blu-ray? I couldn't hear you, sorry.
It's Howard the Duck on Blu-ray.
Yes! Yes! How dare you ask that question? You should know. This isn't Google, sir. This is Comic-Con. I'm going to give you a Captain EO button. Captain EO, everyone knows Captain EO? They should got Yes, hello.
Hey, I'm a little short for the mic.
That's okay.
Question for the panel. If you're going to play a character in the Disney fan fiction movies, what character would you want to play?
Chewbacca.
Chewbacca?
I want to say Poe Dameron, but really, I would just want to hang out with Poe Dameron. Yeah, I'm going to say Poe Dameron's best friend. I think that's Ben, but I think I would just create a new character that was just like, oh, that's crazy. Let's go on another adventure.
I played Princess Leia.
I played a bunch. I saw Adventures in Shakti and Padme and all kinds of things. But I would want to be Han Solo because I want to be a badass. Yeah.
Red leader, new ones.
Sure, yeah, they're all. Yeah, and I want to make it clear. I was very upset when Disney tricked me out of the movies. I've actually made my peace with it because once The Last Jedi came out and people started getting furious at the movies, that's when I realized, you know, if people are angry at Star Wars, that means you're doing Star Wars right. And so I no longer consider them fan fiction. And I actually think they're going to start merging the worlds, and I think that's fine. I think Disney and Marvel and the Muppets and Star Wars, it's just a matter of time. So I'm going to think a little bit ahead. And the character that I would play in a Star Wars movie would be Bing Dong, who is the stupid cousin of Bing Bong from Inside Out. Bing Dong is, well, it comes as no surprise. It might be a little offensive. I don't want to say anything about the character's details, but it'll be the kind of character that some people think is hilarious and some people think shouldn't exist.
George, can I quickly tell you an anecdote that is 100% true?
Yes, but first I'm going to give you a broken Empire Strikes Back watch. It's fixable.
When I was getting ready for this very panel, someone came up to me and went, "Oh my God, are you Bing Bong?" And I said, "No, I'm Watto." And they went, "Oh."
Whenever anyone, and this is advice for life, whenever anyone asks you, "Are you Bing Bong?" the answer is always yes. You'll just hurt people. Yes.
Can I ask the audience a question before this gentleman asks his?
Yes.
Does anybody remember the Yip monsters?
Yeah.
I guess being in this environment just made them pop into my head.
This is directed towards Watto.
Hell yeah.
I would just, it's kind of more of a compliment because I'd like to mention, I like your change in style from last time we started the Attack of the Clones. You abandoned the newsboy hat.
Little hat, I have a little hat. I didn't bring it tonight, yes. And we went a couple more days without shade.
I just want to know what made you make these choices. What made you
Yeah, no, how much time do we have? 45 minutes? This is, look, Watto takes his craft very seriously, right? And the notion was in Attack of the Clones, George sent me the script, and originally Watto was the second lead. It's a sort of parallel storyline, Anakin coming in touch with his darkness, and Watto cannot get over the fact that he lost his slave child. I'm calling it as I sees it, okay?
Yeah.
And so he said, really show the wear and tear of this on you emotionally. And I said, what shows rock bottom better than a little scruff and a little hat? And then Bradley Cooper stole that first started.
And here's the thing, and I have to apologize to Watto for that, because at the time that I wrote Attack of the Clones, I did not know how to write that story. The story of Watto losing his slave child. And for any of you who saw the 60 minutes, not the 60 minutes, yeah, the 60 minutes interview with Charlie Rose interviewing me, I compared the loss of Star Wars franchise to Disney to the feeling you get when you sell your children to the white slavers.
Once again, I would like to recommend that everyone leaving here Google to find out that, yes, in fact, George Lucas said
and you know what's great about that clip is that I actually don't come off as the worst person in that clip anymore. I'm playing a long game, all right? Nobody gets it. You think you've outsmarted me? I'm 10 years ahead of you, I promise. I'm going to give you, and this is actually kind of a special gift. This was donated. This is like perfect rapping. This is a ticket to the premiere of Phantom Menace. It's no longer good. It happened to the
because he singled out Watto, I have a prize for you as well. It's 5 potato wedges and a pack of honey monster.
Yes.
My question for George.
Yeah.
First, thank you for being here.
What's that?
I have a question about what's kind of going on. It came out this week in Star Wars that Jon Favreau of Elfman is getting his live-action Mandalorian show. What do you think about that? And when is your apprentice Dave Filoni going to get a little more credit in the Star Wars universe?
Can I just pause for clarification? You're speaking of Jon Favreau, director of Elf, the 4th best movie of 2003? Show some fucking respect.
What was the second part of your question?
When is your apprentice Dave Filoni going to get promoted a little bit in the now Disney era Lucas?
Well, I don't make the admin decisions anymore. I don't do the hiring or the firing or the promoting. But I will say that, first of all, it's Jon Favreau, the filmmaker who made Swingers, not the Obama-era speechwriter. Some confusion. I mean, either of them, I think either would be fine. I would actually encourage Disney to also give a Star Wars movie to Jon Favreau, the Obama-era speechwriter. It's inspirational. I think the country could use that right now. Like, wouldn't you go see a Star Wars movie written by an Obama-era speechwriter? I think Jon Favreau, the writer-director of Swingers, is so money and he doesn't even know it. That's a Swingers reference. And I'm going to give you these illustrated cards that came with the Force Awakens CD soundtrack. That I mean,
They throw the CDs out. You got those out of the dumpster?
No, these were from the CD aisle. If I buy a CD, I don't need 2 art prints to come with it. I don't know what to do with that. Like, genuinely, I want to say this. If you're putting, it's enough that I'm buying on CD. I don't need 2 art prints. Kind of the CD thing, I'm at a loss.
Did they make you buy the Force? Did they just give you?
Yeah, I don't get anything free. I don't own these things. I pay a ticket like everybody else. I'm a billionaire. I don't care. Yes.
Sonia, can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street? Practice. And how to get to Carnegie Hall.
Here's a puzzle. All right, practice that puzzle. Hi.
Hello. So, question for the panel. Porgs, would you eat them and how would they taste?
Okay, they're birds, right? So I would eat them. Like, why would I suddenly go along? I eat other birds. I eat duck and chicken and stuff. Why would I be like, oh, but not this bird? I would probably eat it once, as long as it wasn't poisonous. That's kind of my line in general. Like, is it poisonous? Cool. And I'll eat it. And I bet it tastes like chicken.
Yeah, it's no different than like a guinea pig slider or something like that.
I thought you said purrs.
Would you eat herbs?
I wouldn't eat purrs, no. Or whatever you said. Sometimes you don't have a choice.
Porgs. I think they're too cute. I don't eat ugly animals.
Like chickens.
Yeah.
Turkeys are very ugly. You eat turkeys all day.
You need a penguin, right?
I thought about how the dad watches the eggs and the mom goes out for food. And they're
They would fucking eat you know that, right? I get so worked up about it. I'm sorry.
What do you eat?
I don't answer.
Big bird.
Oh, I wouldn't. I wouldn't eat Big Bird because there is a person there. I would just feel terrible if I tripped myself into cannibalism again.
I try to be very forthcoming with my answers, but I won't answer questions about what I eat because a few years ago I had a meal in a food court in a mall in Australia and people took a picture of it, put it on the internet, and made fun of it. So I don't talk about food anymore.
And hypothetically speaking.
But since you have a food question, I'm going to give you this Pizza Hut pizza box.
That is true.
Hypothetically speaking, and this is purely hypothetical, if I were to eat the pork, I would eat the fried, cut in the strips, and then I would give the potato wedges to someone in the audience.
Yes.
My question to Mr. Lucas. So my dad worked in a grocery store when they had the Pepsi tie-in cans for the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
And he brought home a 7-foot cardboard Jar Jar Binks with a Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
And I have no reason not to believe that's still in my parents' attic. And I'm wondering, what should I look for it, and what should I do with it if I find it?
You should look for it, and when you find it, hold it close to you and never let it go.
Is Jar Jar with a Mountain Dew canon or not canon?
Does he do the do?
All he does is the do. Yeah, let me tell you something. If you were to watch the outtakes, from Phantom Menace, half of it is just him chugging Mountain Dew. It was heartbreaking to cut those scenes because they explain everything in the movie. Like, everything he does is because he's got a super forward, like, drinking Mountain Dew, and then he he rushes in, he's like, and I remember they're like, George, the movie's 5 hours long, so we can't cut all the Mountain Dew scenes. And then I had to go talk to Mountain Dew, and they were furious with me. They said, we made this sponsorship deal with you. This is part of, we're never going to forgive you for this, George Lucas. I said, look, story comes first. And no one's going to watch a 5-hour movie where 3 of the hours are him checking Mountain Dew. All right? And honestly, I wish Disney would release that cut. I don't have the power to do it anymore. And you tweet at Disney and Mountain Dew and say, please release the full Mountain Dew cut of the family.
In the prequels, they have that scene with Yoda using the lightsaber for the first time, and that's kind of the only time you've ever really seen him use a lightsaber. And it's a very different portrayal than he's been in the other films. I personally find that really badass. However, there's been a lot of discord with the fan community saying it's passive, it's against Yoda's nature. I would love to know your take on that.
Look, we saw what happened, all right? And the fan community loves to say what wouldn't happen in movies that they just saw happen. You know? Like, this is something that the fan community, I would suggest you could work on, which is if you watch a movie, you can like it or not, but you shouldn't say things like, that would never happen, because it fucking did. Alright? So I'm not... You can say, I don't like it, but don't say that Luke wouldn't go live on the island. It's the best place a Jedi has ever run to. The other options were a desert and a swamp, alright? Luke was the smart one. He's like, I'll live on an island with a community and people that I can interact with. Like, this was a good outcome. And I'm sorry if everyone's had disappointments in their life, but get over it. I mean, I've been through some rough stuff too. I was cuckolded, all right? Yeah. Too hard. It's real. Even on, yes.
So true. This is a question for everyone on the panel. What is your favorite letter of the alphabet, and who would win in a fight
So
to the
funny
death between the letters?
how quickly you just dropped that.
Yeah, that was so quick.
The last 30 seconds we have. Okay, so
how quickly he dropped that reference that Lucas.
Yeah, he says, I've been cuckolded, and then you just move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is our favorite letter of the alphabet?
W.
I'm going to say M for movie.
I'm going to say T for Travis.
I'm going to defer to Maria.
I'm going to say C for Comic-Con.
C is a good one. I'm going to change my answer to C, and it also applies to C Red Tails, C Strange Magic, C Star Wars Detours coming this Christmas. Every episode is dropping on Christmas morning. It's a Star Wars Christmas after all. Tweet about this. That the Christmas plan is for them to release Star Wars Detours. Oh, hold on. You're going to try us, right?
And C for Cookie. Let's not forget.
And I also think K would win in a fight against all the other letters because K looks like it's like ready to kick against it and punch. I just think K is a very violent letter.
I think are we at time? I need someone to tell me if we what? 8:45. And is that the time this ends? I need who's in charge of who's the boss? If someone's the boss. It's fine. Well, this person sounds like they're in charge.
More questions.
More questions. Go ahead.
I have a question for Watto.
Elsie.
If you had a blank check to make any crazy project that you would like to make, what would that be?
English Fulton. Try, you get the prize.
I have a question for George. Now that we know about R2D2's feet fetish, I'm in awe of your brilliance. How on earth did you come up with the novelization of Return of the Jedi, the name for space jazz, jizz?
Yeah, that's space jazz is called jazz music. That's canon. Max Reno plays jazz music. That's true, and I came up with that. And we all know how I came up with that. I was alone. I think the lights mean that the panel's over. So I want to, what am I saying? Yeah, we got to get Sonia's book back. Is Sonia's book there? Where's Sonia's book at? Is it in the audience? Where's it at? Who has it? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank my guests on the panel. I want to thank everybody for coming. Please leave those things, and we'll play the final music now. And the force be with you.
Pretty abrupt ending.
How did it feel watching that?
Yeah.
I remember it, but I wouldn't have remembered any of it if I hadn't watched it. You know what I mean? Like it's in there, but it's not accessible unless I see it. But there's also that thing where, as I'm watching it, every now and then I'll think, "Oh, I should say this," and then I watch myself say it. And then there's also the thing of sometimes a joke will happen and I'll be like, oh, it feels like a different person than me made that joke. Like there were a couple things I laughed at because I'd forgotten them, and it doesn't feel like I'm laughing at myself. It feels like I'm laughing at somebody else. It's interesting.
It's also weird, I mean, because that was the first show we had done somewhere other than a UCB theater. I mean, you had never done, I guess, other than the early shows, but for like a largely new crowd that had never seen a George Lucas talk show before, there are so many regular jokes that we make over and over again, references that are made constantly, that get kind of like the laugh of recognition, that on this show got huge laughter because people couldn't believe how quickly we pulled that out. And in fact, it's like, that's us going for the hackiest, laziest go-to joke we make every single time. But to them, it just seemed like, oh my God, where are they pulling this from?
Right. And yet, I think there were jokes in that we only made at that show.
Totally. But some of those, like you pulling at like Strange Magic and Red Tails and the cuckolding, like so many of the regular jokes are just like, those are perennials. Those are every week. I mean, people literally have bingo cards at the UCB show based on how frequently we make those references. So there'll be like a little bit of a pop, but it's more just like, okay, good, I get to check that off my list.
I had genuinely
for like 90% people who have never seen any version of the show before.
The thing that I'd forgotten that really made me laugh was when they asked if Jar Jar does he do the do, because they had the Mountain Dew thing, and then I said that everything that there was a 5-hour cut of the movie where 3 hours of it was Jar Jar Binks drinking Mountain Dew, and it explains every scene, and I'd completely forgotten that, and it really makes me laugh. Like, it genuinely is so funny to me, the idea. And then when I said that Mountain Dew was furious when they found out I'd cut all of those scenes, and they're like, we can't believe you did this. And I genuinely, that there is kind of a recurring thing where someone will bring something up and then I'll instantly say that we filmed a bunch of scenes that didn't make into the movie. And I think it's really funny to imagine a lot of Jar Jar Binks drinking Mountain Dew is funny. It's funnier than anything Jar Jar Binks actually ever does in Phantom Menace. just if you filmed a scene of Jar Jar Binks really freaking out drinking Mountain Dew, it would automatically be the funniest Jar Jar Binks scene.
It also just feels like watching that, not to get like sappy about it, but when I was filming The Tick and I would be like prioritizing getting out in time to be able to make it to George Lucas talk show, and people were like, why is this still such a priority for you? There's such a specific energy to doing that show, and how much we are without a net, and how much we don't know what the guests are going to do. And Connor and I barely prep anything in advance with each other. And just the energy of that, all of us interacting on stage and the audience not knowing what's coming, it's such a unique thing. And watching it now, I miss it so much.
And it truly is the thing. I mean, I can't believe it took so long before I realized that what it is the adult version of like you, Griffin, are like the equivalent of if 5-year-old Connor had a Star Wars toy that could talk back to me.
But I mean, I feel the same way interacting with you.
But it's like, that's what, like, it's interesting because you think about like when you're a kid and you have little action figures and you make them talk and you move them a little, and then you get to a point where it's like, oh wait, I don't need these little action figures. I'll be the toy.
Yeah.
And I'll dress up and I'll, like, it's an interesting thing that it's almost like like the way a child will play, and then what that becomes as an adult. What is the adult version of that play?
Yeah.
Because I think when I played with Star Wars toys, I know that I liked having funny things happen as much as anything. Like I remember that there were characters that I liked to make really stupid. You know.
For a second, I thought the two of you had logged off. That you were just tired.
No.
It's like, we'll let them finish up. They've got
No, I
this.
wouldn't. Yeah, 2 o'clock in the morning here, but it's been it's weird. I mean, that's like that particular show is long enough ago that, like Connor said, I barely remember the things that happened during it. So many of them feel like a different person because we've done so many shows in between then and now. And then also it just feels weird to think about doing a show right now. You know, like it's not to be too heady about it, but it's very weird to just be like, right, we were in like a room with a bunch of strangers.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're all still sort of holding out hope that next month happen. Like, I haven't canceled the guests for next month yet.
Right. It's like it's such
Who
a
are the
month basis thing of
who are the guests for next month?
Do you want me to say this?
Say them.
Wait, no. Wait, is there any reason not to?
No, I guess not.
I still have the alerts on my Google Cal. My phone has like alerted me.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I'll be honest. Within 48 hours. No, you'll tell in a second. Come on. Within 48 hours of the Guster tour that I was on being canceled, I had deleted the Stepfathers and ASCAT from my calendar. They were set to recur on Friday and Sunday night forever, and I just deleted them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've deleted everything like that. Now, who were the guests going to be for the May Star Wars Day shows?
It was gonna be, we had Serenato Cheney, who is Ash on Pokemon.
Wow.
And then David Mandel, who's like Seinfeld. He ran Veep for a long time, Curb and SNL and everything writer. And he wrote like a 600-page book on Ralph McQuarrie, the guy.
Will you show it? Will you hold it up? Will you hold it up? Will you show it to us?
Yeah, I'll go get it.
Because he sent Patrick a copy of it, and now he just has it.
But I like at the end of March, whatever, or no, beginning of April. The first Friday of this month, I got the notification on my phone, like alerting me that I should head over to the theater for the show.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Stay inside. Don't do it.
I didn't do it. It's too late.
It's
wow.
So big.
It's 22 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, you should send it to me, Patrick.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, it's 2 books. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Well, the that was our version of that. Was that? Do you see all this fake Saturday Night Live announcements?
Yeah.
But that's real. That would have happened. Ours would have happened. I can't go get it. It'll take.
John Krasinski show.
I had already bought a bunch of stuff that I was going to give away at the May Star Wars Day George Lucas talk show, and now it's just like, I guess it's just mine. I guess I just own this stuff.
I mean, you'll give it away in June.
Yeah.
Would you consider doing an online version of the show?
Good question, Connor. That's a great question.
It could be made ephemeral.
Yeah.
One could have interactions with the audience, both audibly and visibly.
Twitch definitely has a setting where you can make it just go away forever as soon as it's over.
Yeah, so does Life.
That's true.
Has a
Life
setting
does
where it just goes away forever.
That's the only setting.
And I think they did it. It's called the coronavirus. They not only make it go away forever, they make the show itself go away. And every show. And 3% of everybody.
We still have the internet.
For now.
Oh my God, what a What a glorious sentence.
I don't know. I don't know if Patrick and Connor told you this before I logged on, but the last show we did in the George Lucas show time slot before the UCB theater shut down because of coronavirus was an hour of Watto singing songs because Connor was on tour with Guster, and I was like, well, let's hold on to the slot and do something with it. So I did a one-man Watto show singing rewritten Broadway standards, and at the time it felt like, oh, what a weird thing to do for a month or two before the show returns to normal, and now it's like the weirdest thing to think about.
And it was one of the last shows at the UCB theater.
It was true. I mean, that show was on a Friday, and the UCB theater was closed down the next week. It didn't last another week fully.
That show feels like it's like the sitcom Joey to George Lucas Talk Show being friends.
Yes, it does feel like that. It feels like we somehow ruined everything.
Is that the main source of your pessimism, Connor?
What?
The death of UCB and a lot of like physical theater institutions?
Such a good question.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the middle of discussions about various possibilities, but you can see watching that clip how much of it is about feeding off the energy of the room. And it really is like a vast, whatever we would consider. I mean, like, even just this, like, I've been watching like the late night shows where you have like Stephen Colbert in his house or John Oliver in a white void, and every show has a different feeling now, but they're all sort of like searching for what's the rhythm. Because John Oliver, even though his show is still just a one-man thing, it's almost built for a solitary version. But so much of his show was about how he would also feed off the vibe of the audience. And when SNL did their SNL at Home episode the other night, which was a very weird episode, but I found it very comforting to watch. I was really glad they did it. But when they got to Weekend Update, they had like other people on the Zoom to laugh at the jokes. And I actually liked it because I thought it was interesting to hear some human reaction to jokes. Because I've been watching weeks of shows where very funny people will say very funny jokes and then pause for silence. And you're at home watching. If you're not a person who laughs out loud when you're alone in a room, it's a very strange vibe. And so I actually liked hearing the jokes in the SNL Weekend Update Zoom session. But I've seen so many people who were like hated hearing those laughs because they were a diminished version of, it's not the same as having Studio 8H and a full studio audience. And I've heard one person refer to it as a laugh track, which is a pet peeve of mine when people refer to laughter as a laugh track when it's an actual human reaction. But it's hard for me to visualize because like this is fun doing this and watching this, but it's not the same. It's not the same energy as, I literally start the show out by running around a theater and high-fiving everybody in the audience, which is now a death sentence. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't do it. Not for everybody, but like, I don't. What? Elbow bump the whole audience? You just have to wash your elbows. You can still COVID can still be transmitted via elbow. It's just most likely it just isn't.
You give away so many gifts and you can't give everyone one wet wipe.
Just give everyone in the audience a wet wipe.
Not a bad idea. It's very cheap.
Okay, well, that'll be your job to get the wet wipes for the George Lucas Talk Show. I just don't know. Patrick and Griffin are more optimistic than I am.
Everything's gonna be fine, and we're all gonna be fine.
I will say I disagree with that point. I am not optimistic at all right now, but I do feel.
You're trying though.
No, I feel this sort of overriding urge to figure out how to adapt and still keep on doing things during this. And I find it very frustrating that things can't exist in the same form as they used to. And I certainly don't like doing things remotely over the internet, but I feel like the only thing that can kind of keep me going is to try to keep on field testing how to do things that feel somewhat similar to what we used to do.
And I feel like Obi-Wan Kenobi, at the two most crucial parts of his life, first after he chopped off the arms and legs of his best friend, he could have done a mercy killing. But instead he was like, fuck this, and he walked away. And then, 30 years later, he meets his friend again, who's now a robot, who's killed all the babies and killed everybody.
It's like 20 years later.
20, God, really? It's 20 years later? That makes no sense.
Like 19 to be, yeah.
It's like 19.
I don't want
It's like 19.
I don't want
So 19 years later, he meets the guy whose arms and legs he chopped off and who he left to die in a volcano, to just slide into the lava. And he's fighting him, and then he's like, fuck this, and he just quits. And if I was doing the special edition of Star Wars, I would add a line in where old Obi-Wan Kenobi says, I wish you'd rolled into the lava like I wanted you to.
But Connor, you're right now in the spot where you could do a mercy killing, but you're not going to, and you're going to keep pushing ahead into the next 19 years of your life, where you still do the George Lucas talk show.
And why are you capping the amount of years we do the George Lucas show? Weirdly specific, 19.
We will not do it more than 19 years.
I guess that's the cut. There's no chance we make it another 20. 19 we could do.
0%.
Someone in the chat mentioned the Planet Scum open mic, which is similar to how SNL did it, where the audience is there laughing and all of that as well. And I just wanted to mention that because it got highlighted in the chat.
It's a cool experience. I don't know if anyone has pitched it to y'all yet, but there is both audio coming from a Discord chat, so there's 60 people who are all laughing, and then also a number of people who are visible alongside the performer, smaller, sort of around the screen, who you can then see laughing, which is a very Shakespeare era sort of audience experience.
But aren't they It's 60 people laughing into various microphones.
Yes. Yeah. It doesn't sound as discordant and chaotic as one would expect.
No.
We do have a thing where we all sing happy birthday to each other for the discordant and chaotic effect. And the laughter somehow just sounds good.
I think it's because it's all coming in at various intervals of laughter, whereas the happy birthday, it just cancels out the mic's ability to cope.
I think we will figure it out, and I think we will hopefully do something if we can talk Connor into it.
I'm just older enough to have much less hope than any of you.
Connor, rebellions are built on hope.
That's very true. That's very true. And also, I keep on asking, how would George Lucas and Watto react to this whole crazy situation? I want to hear what they have to say.
I think something like this.
Not just from the selfish perspective of humans who cannot see this live and will never be able to see this live, regardless of the situation. We might be able to see it once live, and then we'll have to come home to San Francisco.
Yeah. Or you could tell Sketchfest to let us in one year.
Also I wish we had that poll still.
We didn't apply. Didn't apply. That's not fair. We never applied. That's not fair.
Why didn't we apply?
We never did. It's not fair to them. We never applied.
Oh my God, you would have gotten it so fast. Everyone here is just obsessed with Star Wars because it's
I tried at the last minute to get my podcast Dead Eyes and Sketchfest. They're like, maybe next year. And I should have said, you don't know about the plague that's about to happen.
You should have said that. What egg on your face?
I wish I'd said that, so there'd be someone who has a vague memory of like, wait a second, what was that email? And I'm like, I think that guy caused the plague. Yeah, that's a check I'm not going to be able to cash. That's a reference to how old people used to get money. And that's a direct debit. That's a Venmo that won't get verified. I don't know.
I'm interested, Connor. I mean, something that I've been doing, stuff that has been interesting to me lately, and I've been doing research into, is the audience as a performer, and how the role of the audience in performance and artistic performances, what sort of things audiences just come to do together, and the improv and all sorts of interesting things around that. You're talking about how important this audience energy is to your performances. I mean, I suppose I was about to ask you a really depressing question. I'm like, what are the elements of that so that we can tear it apart and then put it on a whiteboard and then figure out how to make that happen in other places? I'm interested in figuring out how to make online audiences feel more
So you want to build a Darth Vader?
I want to build a Darth Vader.
Can I
Yeah,
answer?
how do you,
Oh,
I
absolutely.
know it's not posed to me, but I have an answer.
Oh,
please.
Yeah.
Because I've been struggling with this, and I feel like the answer is you cannot try to make it behave in the other way.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way it will ever provide the same qualities as doing a live show for a real audience. It's a very very different thing.
You sound like Neil Young talking about his Pono.
I think the challenge is finding a way to make it feel like its own valid form.
Yeah.
You know? So I find it more interesting to figure out how do you adapt to the limitations of the time and figure out how to make something that has its own qualities and its own pluses.
Yeah, Neil Young said that digital music that you'd hear on an iPod was an abomination. But then he said, how about you listen to it on this? And it was a big Toblerone that didn't fit in your pocket. And he's like, it sounds good if you listen to music on this. And that's the moment we're all in now, is we're like, this is bad.
Yeah.
But we got to find the big Toblerone shaped thing that doesn't fit in our pocket.
Toblerone. I want a Toblerone now.
That is a very accurate description of the Pono shape, though.
It's just a big Toblerone. It doesn't fit in your pocket.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is the only way to make it good. And that's where we're all at now. We got to find the big Pono.
We got to find our Cheap Trick bundle with the Pono.
We do indeed.
I don't know. I don't know what the new things are going to be. I agree that they can't be like the old things. But and the thing is, I think things will get back to normal. It's just a question of what's on the other side of this, and what will, and who's hello.
There he is.
Sometimes we just luck out and need mugs. I do want to be aware of the time on the East Coast right now. It is probably extremely late.
2:16 a.m.
Yeah, it's 2:16 in the morning. That's why I was like, we should be aware of that.
I want to thank you all so much
for
joining us. Thank you so much for entertaining our questions. This is so cool.
Yeah, this is amazing.
I really think that it's fun. It's funny that the best part of the show happens right at the end of it. It's just a cat.
That has often been the case with our live streams.
Multiple hours to make it to the Pono references. The best part of the show.
You got to find a Pono message board and go post this after it's up.
The Pono community is going wild right now.
I tell you, there's a lot of people who they're in their houses and they have their Pono and they're like, this is the best.
Doesn't matter that it doesn't fit in my pocket now.
Yeah.
We don't have pockets.
We don't need pockets. Where we're going, we don't need pockets because we're not going anywhere. Pockets were a thing that people used to put in their pants because they might go someplace and need small things in there with them. And now people don't go outside, so pockets are pointless.
We have a single phone pocket so that we can keep listening to pretend we're less alone.
Yeah. Patrick just sent me a private message. He says, I want to go to sleep.
That's super fair. That's super fair. This went longer than we initially expected, so thank you so much for everyone staying on.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so dearly. This was an incredible experience. We hope to do more
Similar things, yeah.
Watch through similar things. Show up on. I'm sorry.
I think it's important, since this was the first one and it was called a Watchalong, that the emphasis should be on the long part.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a good idea.
I gotta bold that.
Watch long. Long.
A lot of N's and O's and long.
You can never do one of these that is less than 3 hours and 18 minutes long.
That is the new, that's the standard that's been set.
Like the presidential term, the first person to hold the office sets the term.
We're just chasing the 12-hour day.
Yeah. But we got to end it now before it hits 3 hours and 19 minutes.
That's
It's
true. We
gotta
don't
be-
want to, that's too high of a bar for the future.
It just did. We gotta go.
Okay.
Fuck, we're out of here.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Check out the Planet Scum open mic if you want to. It looks cool. It sounds cool.
And we'll have links to everything that they do in the Twitch description, so check out all their stuff. And
thank you
so much. And with that, I think it's time to say good night and good